Welcome back to Pipe Dreams. We are here in a new location. We are mobile again, doing our first podcast in 2025. We're going to hit it hard, straight back in the ether with a serious, cool cat. AC 93, Aaron Colton 93 in the house. Welcome to Pipe Dreams.
Thank you guys for coming. It's I was pretty stoked, but you're the first guest at the new shop. Garage 93 just moved into my new house here in Santa Monica, so first guest here. It's a perfect occasion to break it in.
No, I'm super stoked. And yeah, I mean, we've got some big goals this year. Corey is going to do some stuff in the background, get us going. But look, we level up every single time. We got the new boxes out around.
Just the mic boxes.
Intro in the mic box.
Intro the mic boxes because we got to level up. We got to let everybody know we're hitting the ETH hard.
Steady improvements all the time.
So before we get rolling into this, as always, let's shout out some sponsors, our partners, Law Tigers, of course. They've been with us since day one. They're America's motorcycle lawyers. If you or you know somebody that's been in an accident, please call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS. Thank you so much. And of course, we've got Yuasa batteries.
Yes, Yuasa battery is the most trusted battery in power sports since 1979. For over 45 years, Yuasa has delivered power, reliability, and passion at every turn. Yuasa supplies power sports batteries to more OEMs and riders than all our competitors combined in the US and globally. The reason is simple: premium quality, unmatched reliability, long life, and advanced engineering with years of application expertise. Yuasa battery, setting the standard for power sports batteries since 1979. Each and every day, it starts with Yuasa.
Dude, I think maybe you should go into something else and just, what do they call the jingles, but non-jingle? You got the voice.
To put people to sleep?
Yeah, dude, the voice. The voice
it's funny,
of
everyone
God.
says he has the ASMR voice. I feel like mine's just monotone and flat. But anyway, find your battery at your local Yuasa retailer via yuasabatteries.com. Go into your local shop. They probably stock Yuasa batteries. They're the best. Appreciate you guys for supporting the pod. And let's get into it, Jimmy. We've been up since 2 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah.
Got on the Big Bird really pretty much probably still the middle of the night last night. I know I left my house. The sun was just going down actually when I left my house. But it wasn't too bad. We made it out here to the West Coast. How about you?
Yeah, same thing. Early day, but it's tough, man. We try to do these podcasts, and it's getting tougher and tougher in the off season when we're so busy, right? You're doing a ton of stuff, and Chuck Walla, I feel like we've hit a lot of guests in Chuck Walla, and we're trying to, scope things out a little bit, and bring in some other guests. Colton's a OG back in the day, so we've been talking about it for a while, and it's been cool to kind of put this one together. I'm glad we're in Garage 93. We're in a different studio. We're full mobile, and
happy to host. This is a first for me too. I've never done a pod in the shop, so I've shot and filmed so many projects here, but this is a first. So
I think you're more knowledgeable about studio setups than we are at this point.
We're rolling
our EP over here.
It was good. We got lighting.
Are we hot? We cold? Yeah. What kind of settings you got around? We're like, we eyeball it.
A lot of people may or may not know of you. Obviously, in recent times, you're kind of like an Instagram sensation with your ASMR bike build videos. But you've been, in my opinion, kind of leading the whole stunt world, and probably not just my opinion. I mean, by stats, you've been leading the whole stunt world for a long time.
That's such an interesting thing because stunt riding as a whole is where it came from for me, because that's what got my foot in the door with everything that we've seen now. But specifically the period of time that I got into stunt riding, which was 2005, 2006, rough bunch. Rough bunch. It was different. It was a total vibe within the 2000s, and these events were huge. And sometimes we'd go down to a stunt competition in Florida, and there'd be 20,000 attendees.
Really?
And you're like, yeah, this was 2006 Stunt Wars.
Was it like Krusty Demon style?
It was anything goes. It was what. The way they had it set up for individual freestyle was your qualifying run 2 minutes, and if you made the top 15, you get a 3-minute run. This was in that format, and you'd sign up and get your number. I'm 240th.
Just anybody shows up.
There'd be guys Gixxer 1000 going 100-mile-an-hour wheelies just doing passes, and then there'd be guys crushing it and everything in between. But it was wild. It was a wild time of wear a helmet and be a motorcycle rider. And it was kind of this catch-all for stunt riders, hooligans, street guys, just outlaws. It was like, there was just as much riding going on at the end of the track where the competition was, where there was down, where the actual grandstands were. But it's crazy because I made it through that community safely, relatively. It was interesting because a goal of mine, like when I was getting into stunt riding, is I was just a motorcycle enthusiast that saw DVDs in a dealership.
When you say motorcycle enthusiast, you were like 9 years old?
I know. Like,
So yeah. So put it together. Like the PW50 that I rebuilt for my daughter, I got that at 2 years old. And so like that was a Christmas gift when I was 2, and I learned how to ride on it. And by the time I was 5, I was too big for it. And there was a big gap from like 5 to 12. I rode like none. And there was a deal that I had with my parents, A honor roll 2 years in a row, KX85 for my birthday. So that was the deal. If I got A honor roll 2 years in a row, I'd get a KX85 for my birthday. So locked into that. And it's funny because I grew up in rural Minnesota, so like you could kind of ride, even though you're in a suburb, out of your neighborhood and then go to the cornfields or a construction site or whatever. So riding was not always like go to the moto track. It was just meet up with your cousins or somebody else in town or
kind
whatever.
Of free ride.
Yeah. And it really, more than anything, it was just trail riding around. Like, and I wasn't even seeing, with the exception of going to Supercross, I never go to a motocross track or flat track race or a road race. Wasn't going to those. Just was riding and enjoying it. But you still go to the dealership at the time, which was City's Edge, to buy whatever you need, parts, tires, this, that, and the other. And they always had the TV running. And this was the time where there was like Crusty Demons, maybe some Pastrana videos, but they had these stunt riding videos called like Judgment Day.
I remember
and
those.
Serving it up. And I just remember being enamored. I was like, that is so
We had them
cool.
at our delership.
Yeah, of
VHS.
course. Yeah. Like it was
They were just
Star
Luke all day
Boys
long.
all day long, and it's like wrecks and people running from the cops. And eventually I ran into a group of guys at the dealership with the bikes that I would see in the DVDs in the parking lot, like Gixxers, Zip Ties, Crash Cage, Thrash. And I remember asking, like, where do you guys go? And they're like, the 169, the 42, like where a parking lot, they would go anywhere. But I eventually, a couple years later, or not even a couple years, within the year, convinced my dad to let me buy a Honda 50, which he was totally against because he was like, why would you want a Honda 50? And at the time, BBR was ripping, but these guys all had little 50s. And they were all riding wheelies through the neighborhood, and I just wanted that so bad. And like within a short period of time, went from Honda 50 to TCR 125 to F4I to competing in like 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was 13, 14 years old.
Okay.
But I wasn't like road racing. I wasn't like on a track of performance riding. It was like stunt riding. That was my in. And then we found out on a web forum, like Messenger web forum, that there was a competition that was like 6 hours away in a couple months. And it was like the Stunt Life Shootout in like Racine, Wisconsin. We're like, okay, so you have like a flyer on a web forum with an address and like the worst version of Microsoft Paint, like a wheelie picture cut out with like a person doing a stoppie and like a money sign. And like, it was, okay, let's hop in the truck. And my dad and I drove out there. And then I saw like, whoa, there's some guys that like have a matching bike and truck and they're a really good rider. And like, they had a vibe. And then there's some people that's just like smoking weed and doing burnouts in the parking lot. And, like you had this polarity, but then every once in a while you'd be like, that guy, like, he looks like he has sponsors and he looks proper. And it's like, like there was a guy like Dan Jackson where it's like all his bikes had chrome wheels and his gear matched. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But I still didn't like know what that meant or what to do. I just knew that was super cool. Like the first time I went there, I saw this guy within 3 minutes getting out of the truck, like roll like 700-800 foot stoppie on like an old 929. And then do it again a minute later and again and again. And then like, I was just like, I had seen maybe like 15-foot stoppie in my life. And there's this guy who's like ripping fourth gear, yeah, and then just flying. And I'd never heard like the brakes make that noise, like, and I was from that point, I was like, okay, this is cool. This is like, how do I do this?
Yeah. Did your dad like?
So my dad at the time was buying and selling motorcycles periodically that he was commuting on. So he, before I was born, road raced a little bit with Omra and Wormra in Washington and Oregon on like EX 500 and FZ 750. So like definitely the bikes that those those are just a different generation of motorcycle and brakes. But he did, and then I came around and there was no more racing. But he, through up multiple points in my life, had a sport bike that was how he was getting to work in the summer.
Yeah,
if that was
2
like
months of nice weather.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I remember that being like. I mean, they're cool bikes, like mid-90s ZX9 or 86 Gixxer 750 or like, cool older generation bikes. And he himself, aspirationally, was like, I really would like to learn how to do a wheelie. I've had these bikes forever. That's kind of a big flex. But he didn't really like the idea of putting himself in a situation ever that would be like, do a wheelie, get a ticket. That wasn't like that was his like barrier to entry. So kind of us together found this craft and then would just go to the parking lot. Like there'd be parking lots that they'd post on these messenger boards. And then we'd meet up with people we never met before because someone had permission, or at least it was commonly understood that this was a parking lot that like nobody was going to have an issue with. And then we go out and practice. And it was weird because at the time I was in like 5th or 6th grade. And the way they're avoiding confrontation is like by practicing at like 9 at 10 o'clock at night. It's like you're going to practice from like 10 to 2 a.m., running this weird schedule and just riding, wheelies till 2 a.m. on pit bikes, and it wasn't like an everyday thing, but we had met up with different guys. And around this time, I think YouTube was coming around, but not quite, but there were some other ways you could upload videos, or YouTube had just came around. And I remember I put up a video of me riding that like, I used my dad's laptop. I converted a high 8 tape to digital to put on a hard drive, and I put together a clip of me riding for like 2 minutes with like Rage Against the Machine song on YouTube. And it was crazy because after I did that, it was just like thrashed mesh jacket, motocross helmet, no bodywork F4i, and a half wet fall parking lot in Minnesota. And like I was like 13, and it was like doing some circle wheelies and scraping and doing things that no one had really ever seen. And that video is what put me in touch with people who are like, hey, there's like big competitions down in Florida that like $4, $5, $6 grand to win, so like some of these different ones, which I wasn't like immediately there, but
yeah.
How do you even get to the point of doing circle wheelie? Like I can't even do a regular
Can we
wheelie.
hold on? Can we back up? Can we just talk about that? We were in the era before YouTube and flyers. And we are here today. Like you talking about like getting a flyer. I remember all those dirt track flyers. I'm like, dude, like
how did this get to me? Like I'm on a Gene Romero mailing list or something.
like, dude, it's crazy when you talk about it and you like go back and you're like, dude, I remember all that. But like we're here today and you just kind of forgot that we were totally a part of that.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, let's go. We got a flyer for an event in Florida that we don't really have a contact to get in touch with.
And you just drive to the
and we're going to print MapQuest and without a smartphone and drive
page by page as your dad's driving.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, we missed an exit.
Big
like,
Phil,
how long
dude.
ago? Like
Big Phil.
60 miles ago.
Every single time you're just hitting it.
Damn it.
You're hitting the trip every time.
Yeah.
Right? Trip.
Yeah. But it's crazy because I think now, like backwards, and just to put myself back in a position like, oh, I'm going to drive to Florida 28 hours with like minimal entertainment, no connectivity, and trust that wherever I'm going, there actually is an event.
Yeah.
Like that too. That's a part of it.
It's crazy.
We had showed up to events before. This was in the earlier side that were like half cooked, where they like had the event, sent the invites out, secured enough riders, but like didn't really have like the purse money orchestrated, and that was going to be based on the gate, but they had the purse money listed.
So just hoping enough
Yeah,
people
just
show up.
hoping.
Hey,
And like
100% payback.
100% payback. And then when the gate's short, I would be bummed, and like other stunt riders would like throw bricks through windows. Like it was like different. You know what
wow.
I mean? Yeah.
Okay.
Like different. Within this 10, 15 guys, you have a pretty big polarity of people that. Just the general and this isn't anything negative with that community, it's just the general overhead cost of going road racing. There's a big sifter all the way through club racing to like make this happen. But some guys like local ripper, go to an event in Phoenix, and some guy you've never seen before is like top difficulty rider, and you're like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
You know, he's like just a dude, drove here in his truck, ripped it, you know, not really plugged into anything. And that was kind of a thing that especially in the time pre-YouTube or early YouTube, when it was tough to get stuff on YouTube. Because that was when you had YouTube in the beginning, the hardest part was like, how do I get a like potato phone video that's not all pixelated on the internet? And then how do I have other people see that? And so it's kind of that whole time of thing when stuff was popping off. But it's changed a lot since then. I mean, there was a point when the competition stuff kind of, pinnacled, and then I'm sure you guys felt it too, but like sport bike community as a whole, 2009, 10, 11, 12, it's kind of on the way down as far as just like the general GSXR bike night community type thing was literally the stunt riding audience. So like in the live event world, when that stuff started diversifying to adventure riding and V-twin, and those were always around, but just kind of more segmental away from sport bike community. And I also think in those eras, there was like a couple movies that like really, like in the same period of time that I was getting into it, when you'd go to a competition, there'd be 20,000+ people there, was like MTV Real Life, I Want to Be a Stunt Rider.
Yeah.
You know, like
Biker boys.
Biker boys. There was just, there was
it was the vibe.
It was the vibe. It was totally the vibe.
Yeah.
During that time though, what was XDL? I remember XDL.
So XDL was when things started to get legit.
Yeah, okay.
Basically.
All
So
right.
like Stunt Wars eventually got legit, and the biggest legitimacy there was that the payout was always solid. It was a guaranteed event every year. The judging was maybe not predictable in result, but predictable in curriculum. Because like judging curriculum, if there's different competitions, could be wherever. So XDL was a group of guys that was Randy Grube and Thomas Evans that eventually came together through multiple walks of life, and it was a organized competition body that had 4 to 6 stops a year. So
kind of like X Games vibe.
X Games vibe, yeah. And the background of the event space came from drifting. So Extreme Drifting League. So it was actually like a drift series that would happen in Southern California and had some ties to Japan. And then they started doing it with the motorcycles. And then it just, XDL, the name stayed, but then it specifically became the Stunt Riding Championship. And lightning in a bottle at the right time. The one thing that I don't quite have now that I did when I was 13, 14, 15 was 100% bandwidth just to practice riding a motorcycle.
Yeah.
That was it. So it was the only thing I cared about was I had a baseline requirement that I had to be in school. And as long as I was hitting that requirement, 100% investment was on the motorcycle.
Yep.
And XDL, within the first year they had it, we took a flyer, drove to Phoenix in the middle of July, which was such a weird in hindsight placement to have a stunt competition on asphalt in Phoenix in July. Drove there in an Astro van from Minnesota, competed, and the top 10 made it by default to the national championship. And I top 10 the event, and I went there with high hopes, but I at this time was on a good day can put it all together, but I was smaller in stature, and just some of the bike control stuff was just generally harder, but I made the top 10. Well, the thing was, this was in July. The national championship was in January. So I had 6 months of time from then till, plus like 2 competitions until my first national championship. And throughout the off season, saw more of what not the mixed bag of competitors, but like the grid was at. Saw like what actually the guys with some backing, some sponsorship. There was some manufacturer, like at the time, Ken Friesen had a Kawasaki deal and Geico. And I was like, oh, okay, there's some names. There's some names and people making legitimate livings on it. So, and there was talk about the finals in Las Vegas having like TV. And I was like, oh, wow. So we're for sure going to Vegas. Didn't really know what that meant in general in planning, but qualified through. Well, my first national championship was that next, I think, January. I can't remember exactly the time of year, but it was, you had the full 6 months basically, which isn't typical, but the series was new, so things were kind of rocking and rolling. Well, I qualified 15th, which is last, went first, and sat in the hot seat all 15 and won.
In Vegas
at
Meaning
the national
you sat
championship.
there and watched everybody else go.
Yeah. At 15.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I sat in the hot seat and watched all 14 go behind me, and
were these people from like all over the world?
All over the world.
And so like at that time, did you know? All right, so is it kind of like, it reminds me of X Games, like you have your stunt list or your trick list, right? Just like
your run.
And so are you just trying to execute your run, or if somebody shows up a trick, are you going to try to do that?
Okay, so basically you kind of have 2 days to size that up. Because you have a practice day and then there's a qualifying day. And the way XDL works is at the end of it, you get a 2-minute qualifying run to qualify. And then you get 3 2-minute runs in a single day, and they drop the low score, average the 2. That's how it was. At this time, it was one and done. So after qualifying, Sunday, race day, final day was one and done. There wasn't this average of scoring, and it was like this for a couple years, actually. But they had it broken down into categories. So basically you had difficulty, which is like the difficulty of the repertoire you have. And then there was execution, and then there was variation. So variation was a 20-point category. Basically you have 20, 40, 60, 80. There's 100 points there, but I'm trying to remember specifically. But basically variation. Yeah. So you have a burnout, acrobatic, stoppy category, wheelie. So those 4, if you don't do a single acrobatic, you can only get up to 15 points if you're doing a 5 difficulty in every category. Okay. So the goal is not touch your feet to the ground, not crash, get a level 5 difficulty in every category. So like at the time, this is crazy, but at like the time, the level 5 difficulty acrobatic was drift out of a corner and immediately put it in neutral, and then turn around backwards and stand on the pegs, and then jump backwards up to the gas tank, like to Christ, and then down. And you only have 240 feet to do it. So like you get that 5 difficulty, not because I like doing that, but because you need to rack points there, because it's way more fun to drift and do wheelies than for me it is to do acrobatic or stuff like that. And then execution is based on attempt.
I just think of the neutral part.
So you drift from first and then you drop into neutral so that the bike doesn't carry idle and hit a barrier if you fall off. Because if it carries idle and you're doing acrobatic and then you fall off, then the bike just keeps going and then breaks the neck off in a barrier.
So how do you carry? I mean, I don't want to get too specific, but how do you carry in neutral? Like, do you have to you just
turn the idle up or something, right?
Yeah, but do you just flick it?
Flick it into neutral. When some bikes, like Kawasaki's never find neutral. You know, I rode those a lot. They find it they find it between every gear except first and second. And it was and I had Cowies for years.
Shout out Cowie.
Yeah, I love the bikes, but they know it too. 0304.
Well, they did that on purpose, didn't they? So you didn't like.
I don't know.
They had like some kind of like gear block or something, so you couldn't go.
Sure.
Something like that.
But no, there was some stuff like that. But basically, like the Honda F4Is, it's super easy to find neutral between first and second. Kawasaki was tough. My Triumphs are okay. Depends. Certain bikes, whatever. And not all people run acrobatics in neutral. Some just run idle up, in gear. But like. Yeah. To wrap your head around like this would be my level 5 difficulty trick for wheelie would be clutch it up at speed in second and then downshift to neutral and shut the bike off so that then you can then just coast no-handed doing the wheelie, and then you start the bike and then you downshift and then you can wheelie out of it. But like
Wait, did you go to neutral?
Doing a neutral. So you're hands neutral.
And just balancing
with the bike off. Yeah, and then you try to start it and then carry your gear and then downshift and to ride out. So like that in that run at that specific time, like that was my difficulty 5 for wheelie, difficulty 5 for acrobatic was that acrobatic.
Do you remember the points you got?
Yeah, I scored a 91.
So you missed.
Actually, no, it was a 94. I scored a 94, and I never scored that high ever, and I rarely scored that high in general. But the things that I missed on was probably a difficulty point or 2 on stoppy execution, because the field, sometimes it's not it's dictated by the field, so if the field has something you don't, even though it's 5 difficulty in this time of year, if this competition, if the field is higher, you're less difficult compared to the field. So but then it got to the point already at that time, this was like 2006, 2007, people are already doing like no-handed circle wheelies. Like AC Ferris came from Spain. He's like ripping them like it's not even a chore, and you're just like, what? Like, so I probably honestly might have got a 4.5 when you got a guy that's like ripping a 10 set of no-handed circle wheelies. Like,
was there ever like massive chatter like through the just massive like, oh, dude, did you hear about the new trick that so and so as like, or
Especially
the stunt or this or like
pre-YouTube.
Yeah, I knew you couldn't
Somebody
find
was sending
it.
a fax out or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Or like,
believe that he
can you
did?
believe that you would hear something that someone did, and you're like, no way.
It didn't happen.
How'd you can't even see them doing it, right?
No,
At
you
that point?
can't. And then you go to the competition,
Yeah,
and then practice day is usually going to be Friday. And
Probably
Friday,
made it more sick though, because then everyone showed up and they're like saving some shit.
Size-
It's like
Sizing
it's like
up.
it's
Yeah.
like Deegan.
Sizing up.
That's like Deegan shit. Like back in the day,
It-
getting
and
arrested, don't have to do it.
And there's some stuff that like you would see on the day, and you're like, oh, I can do it because I know that I'm as good or better than him, and I just never had the idea to do it. And then you'd see some stuff where you're like, not this weekend.
Have you ever had to do like see something?
Turn that thing just a little bit towards your face. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Okay.
Have you ever saw something and be like, oh, let me just roll down the road and see if I can't do it quick? Like, can you do that? Or
Yeah.
like,
So the way the competitions are towards the end, you're always in a queue and a corral.
okay, so you can't.
But in the beginning, like, dude, literally stunt wars. So imagine this. Imagine, like I said, I remember it'd be 297th or 213th. Well, I'd watch these, and they're not separate. It wasn't separated by how good you were. It was when you signed up.
yeah.
So I would be like, oh, when is like Bill Dixon's a good example, rips. And especially when I was younger and he was massively better, I'd be like, well, I need to watch Bill's run. And then, 2 minutes times 60, 70 people, I got hours to practice at the far end of the track. And when I was young, I would literally, right before my run, be like watching, practicing, learning, and then doing in the run all the time.
When you say like track, like is it just like they
Drag
pick some
strip.
drag strip?
But imagine if you
Oh.
so a lot of drag strips in the beginning, but imagine like
I'm just thinking
the
a parking lot.
runoff
designated
of,
ShopRite or something.
Yeah, the runoff of the runoff. So imagine like, the dead part of it. Like,
Yeah.
if you got a quarter mile, you're going to have double the runoff. So like at the end, there's always a session at the end, and 50% of the people that came were not going to sign up to compete. They were going to session all weekend long. And they would sign up to compete, but just not. So they would be able to practice, but they just wanted to session.
Could you just imagine like showing up to a race weekend and just
run
like
practice.
just practice,
SC1
just-
going home, packing it up.
But it's for and I understand it now more than ever. For a lot of these guys, it was like, oh, I can pay $50 or $75 for an entry fee where I don't get hassled and I can ride all weekend.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
like, oh, I got to worry about like
and you can see like you can learn
what everyone else is
Yeah.
doing. Yeah. And I remember when you'd have those winter events down in Florida, and then you wouldn't make them, and you'd be like, man, there's going to be a video soon. Like, is it days or weeks? And you're waiting, you finally see it, and it's obviously going to be all the killers, like, doing something new.
Yeah.
And then it's, like, to the drawing board. Like, I make a winter, Minnesota, right? Winter priority list. So, like, first session out, I saw this, and some tricks had names, but some didn't. So you, like, write a description of what it is, like... So you make a description and then practice priority and then try to put together a run with new stuff.
So it goes back to my first question. Like, did you try this on a bicycle before you decided to
So
do circle
bicycle,
wheelies
I
or
was
what?
like-
Because I'm
Dude,
just trying to figure out
how do
to
you learn it?
this is like the curve.
Yeah.
Okay, so like now that I'm bigger, Honda 50 would be tough, but it's like I had a Honda 50 and then a TTR 125, and then I spent a couple weeks riding a friend's DRZ 400 four-wheeler or Z400, Suzuki Z400 four-wheeler, and that is that's two-dimensional. It's just gas and brake. And then what was crazy is it was a handful of months, a year on the 50, and then it was a year on the TTR 125, just with street tires in a parking lot. Same thing like riding flat track in a TTR. I was just on a TTR practicing wheelies, and then from the time that I rode that quad for a couple weeks, when I got on a Honda F4i that was a stunt bike, which had gearing and like a 12-bar, 45 minutes later was like scraping, and I was 13. But it was just the four-wheeler after the TTR it's just a bigger, heavier bike. And so it was kind of set up, and it was very quick after that. Because then the thing that I had is a lot of guys learning on 600s, it's like a heavy bike, big repercussion for crashing. They had cages and stuff, but at this time too, speed was a little more. Things slowed down a little bit after the thousands.
You guys had like fucking
big sprockets,
70 teeth,
big boys, yeah.
Dude, dinner
pizza
plate.
cutter,
Dude,
dinner plate, yeah.
dude.
So, it all of a sudden I was like, well, I on my TTR 125 was doing all these combos. Like I locked them in. I've already done high chair circles, or I've already done whatever the combination was, and it was just transfer it to a heavier bike. And it was crazy because the uptick from just knowing how to do it already in a smaller bike. And I kept riding the small bike like for the first couple of years alongside.
And what's a high chair? So like you.
That's like when
sit on
you're
a hand-
feet over the handlebars, like
Wheeling.
doing a wheelie, and then like do circle, and like imagine doing it like figure eight, like so
No,
you
I can't.
cut a
I
circle,
can't imagine it.
and then like slip the clutch, and then go the other.
How tall
direction.
are you?
Well, now I'm like 6'1". At the time, then I was probably like 5'8".
How tall are you? 6'3"?
6'3.5", 6'4", yeah.
Dude, I can't. You're a nosebleed.
But it's like, did you have like a
know.
a couple big ones when you were starting
Wait,
out?
but
or you're
first
just
off,
like,
did you
maybe I
start on a
don't?
bicycle? Or
So,
did
I
you
mean,
go
I
straight
can
to a
rip wheelie.
bike? Like, how did you get to two wheels?
Motorcycle for Christmas, and then bicycle my whole life.
you
I never
literally
ever did ride a bicycle though.
So you didn't get a bicycle. When was your first bicycle?
Like 4 or 5.
Well, you said you got a dirt bike at 2, right?
2. I had a dirt
you
bike
had a dirt
first
bike.
with training
Holy.
wheels. Yeah, but it was funny. I learned how to ride a motorcycle before I got a bicycle. I actually didn't get a 12-inch. I got a 16-inch bicycle.
That's
So I already was
crazy.
riding by the time that
I don't think I've ever heard of any transition. Hey, we're gonna get you a bike before a bicycle. Like usually,
Well,
it's
Learn on this
Strider,
thing, we'll get you a bicycle.
Yeah.
Get
it
it
worked
figured
out.
out.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, I don't think it was
Whiskey
Mom's idea.
Jeff over here.
Yeah, but dude, it was the thing about it, and it was cool because this exact bike I rebuilt it for my daughter because
That's
mine. Like after
wow.
after 4 or 5 cousins and 2 families and traded back for a bow and arrow, like literally I got it back and it was thrashed, like the bodywork's hanging up. I built it for the series specifically, but
And you got the Chief on there, dude. It's got.
I had to call Scott for that.
Look at it.
I had to call Scott for that sticker.
That's got to be the cleanest P-dub I've ever seen.
It is.
Cerakote, freaking dude.
Cerakote everything.
Everything, dude. I mean, it needed it.
I'm
'cause
surprised you don't have a tattoo. Like
Not
yeah.
a one.
See?
Not a one.
Can't
Yeah.
put stickers on a Ferrari.
There
dude.
we go. We can do it. We can do it. I figured if I made it this long, I'm good. You know, I made it this long without one.
That's so crazy. So, like, what was your big off when you were like? Did you ever have like a moment where you're like, maybe I don't want to make this my?
Well, I would say one moment was like, so I won the championship 2 times, and then I won a different championship that was, I don't know if you could say competing, but like a different championship of the same, category of things. And there started to be a style of riding where it was a lot more drifting, and it was a lot more, and you've seen a lot of this stuff on Instagram, but where you like slide and snap the brake and bunny hop and like bunny hop 180. Well, right in the beginning, entry speed was like, I don't know, how fast do I have to go to get this thing? Like, is it just cranking the rebound wide open? And it's like, oh, it doesn't even matter. Yes, you can, but you have to snap it so hard that like it's the inertia that's carrying it backward. Well, when I was learning how to do those, I was kind of early to the punch on the American riders doing it. And dude, I was at this parking lot in St. Cloud, Minnesota on my CBR 600, which was a much more aggressive bike. And I was like starting to road race at this time also. And I was liking like speed and transition and like back it in, tuck the front on purpose, turn it around. But on a sport bike, I was loving this. Well, the bunny hop stoppy stuff happened at the same time. And I just ripped this 180 bunny hop stopping. And as soon as I did it, I was like, I have never been this high before, like in that maneuver. And it threw me off so hard that I like running man style. And when I landed on my leg, my body weight broke my tib, fib, and tailus. And I
feel like I remember.
Well, probably because I called JP to get Ting's phone number to get the surgery. It was kind of a crazy deal because I broke my leg. My buddies put me in the back of an Astro van, like at the parking lot. We were practicing at a parking lot at a strip club parking lot that we had permission to ride at, like literally like written permission. Like, dude, you guys, we don't use the parking lot in the day. You guys can use it. So I remember being in the back of my van. I'm holding my leg and I'm just watching my like foot just like dangle, because there's nothing holding it on.
I did that one.
Same. I've done my femur.
And it was crazy. And I just remember like my buddy, I don't know how much time he spent in an Astro van, but those V6 Vortex when you're ripping, I just remember he was just like, whoa, we're driving the van. And I'm thankful he's ripping, but I'm also like in excruciating pain. I'm like kind of screaming, like kind of crying. And I remember we finally get to the hospital and we're pulling up to the hospital and there's, why, right? They put speed bumps at the entryway of all hospital.
Yeah.
Like in hindsight, I was like, why would you do that?
These mother.
So going over the speed bump and I'm holding my calf, and then I just like watch my foot like what. So then like the next speed bump, he like calls it back. I'm like, I'm holding it, I'm holding it with one hand. I'm on my back, still in my riding gear, and that doctor's visit was the only time that I had ever kind of thought twice about it all. Cause I'd been injured before. I think fractured some ribs and broke some hand bones, but tip of tail is a big boy because the soft tissue is also all part of it. It was like all of it,
Yeah.
And the doctor there, the trauma doctor that was going to set it, was talking about surgery. I had already in the back of the van called JP already, because at this time I was road racing.
How are you even talking, dude? How are you? Yeah, of course.
I was road racing at this time, and I remember JP broke his femur at some point, and he had been like, Ting put me back together and this, that, and the other. And I'd kind of heard like the rumor mill of like, Ting did Hayden's wrist, or Ting did, Barry Bonds' knee. He was the guy. So he was totally the guy. So I remember calling JP in, which it'd be funny to talk to him about this now. Like, remember that one time I broke my leg super bad?
I want to know, like, honestly, what your voice sounded like. Like, you, I don't know. How do you?
I'm sure it was not manly. I can tell you that.
How are you
in a tough spot.
How are you coherent?
The body does crazy stuff when it's at that kind of level, because, still in shock, and the pain really started as we were getting to the hospital, but not necessarily right immediately when I broke it, because it was like so loud audibly at the same time, like hearing it and everything like that. And the doctor was talking about going into emergency surgery, and I remember being like, no.
I got to go to Ting.
No. I'm not going to do surgery here. I'm going to fly. And the town I was in is a smaller town in Minnesota. It wasn't like Minneapolis area. It was a smaller town. And he was basically like resistant to that idea. And he's like, well, you're going to have to sign waivers that we'll set it here, but you're going to have to sign waivers that you're like turning down medical care or whatever the case is for the surgery. And the reason that I had any thought otherwise than recovery or succeeding is because he was already talking about like a successful recovery being walking and possibly running again.
Oh yeah, no.
And I was like,
nope.
So in my head that I was thinking like full recovery, not like, like walking again would be great. And he was like talking fusions and whatever. So I said, ain't no way. Yeah, exactly. And this is where things kind of got crazy, because I was almost 18. So I wasn't with my dad in the hospital either when this happened. So I can't remember how I got back to town. I think my dad came down, or my friends drove me up, and I was almost 2 hours away from home when this happened. So we booked a ticket the next morning.
I didn't even know you could fly like that.
It was one of the worst experiences of my entire life.
Yeah.
So I was 17 years old. I had never had a painkiller yet in my life. And we found out that Ting operates on Mondays and Thursdays, and I was hurt on a Sunday. So I flew in on Monday, got right into surgery, but I needed to be fasted to go into surgery in the morning. So I flew from Minnesota to California to San Jose, fasted, never had taken a painkiller in my life, had taken one, and threw up the entire plane ride. I was sick and nauseous the entire plane ride.
With a broken leg.
With a boot on, in the bathroom, throwing up.
But like a boot, because you can't stand on it, right?
Can't stand. So you got a boot and crutches, and the boot's just there just because it's not held together. Like they set it, and it's just.
How do they set? Like, how does it not? You just.
I mean, it is like
if
if you decided to like really clench on your leg, like it for sure would like pull down or whatever. But it was crazy. And then once I got out to Ting's, Tuan was the one who greeted me at the airport. He took over liaison services and was like,
picked you up in the Camry.
Yeah, picked me up, whatever. I don't even remember. I was at that point. It was when things were just kind of really south for me. I was sick. I was in pain. Reality was there. Swelling was in my hips. Yeah,
get me out.
And not to mention, I didn't even know it. I also tore some stuff on my knee, but I didn't even know it till later because it's just trauma first or whatever. But surgery went super well. 2 plates, 21 screws, and then he ended up having to do 1 fusion pin from tib through talus to fib. And it was kind of gnarly, but I wish I could remember the name of the guy, but I remember waking up in the recovery room from the surgery, which had gone successful, and I was next to 350-pound big boy lineman from the Baltimore Ravens who just got his bicep reattached. And I'm like, so we're both like in this recovery center, this private center or whatever. But yeah, it was cool. That was one of the only times I really thought a bit about it. And I think I wouldn't have had such a bad thought if it wasn't for that first doc who like totally put a, like, my mindset wasn't in that.
That's
and
everything.
Then
That's
he's
everything.
like walking. And I'm like, walking.
Dude.
It's not always how it goes though when you go to like the
Yeah.
regular hospital.
Yeah.
I just don't even. I'm
They're like 6 to 8 months. I'm like, I like Doc Henry, dude. What do I gotta do? He's like, it'll grow back. You can ride next week.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like, dude, what?
Yeah.
I had one
different.
of those crazy stories with my collarbone that I'm like, I don't even know how I got through it, dude. Like, I broke my collarbone, flew there by myself.
the thing.
No,
Yeah.
no. To another doctor. Flew there by myself, go in, no ride home. Like, doc's like, dude, don't worry, I'll get you out.
Yeah.
Hey, do surgery, can't wake up, have a flight that night back.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, didn't bring a shirt. So I've got like some big ass, somebody gave me a shirt, like a button down. Like, dude, just.
Motorcycle riders are built different because everything they've seen has been different. Everything they've looked up to has been like, oh, Marquez broke his arm and got a
50
plate,
push-ups.
Straight to the front, or broke his collarbone straight to the front, or like back in the day, was it like
Dude.
doing or sheeing or something? Like casting his legs together and like we're like all this crazy stuff. So it's kind of just what you know. So like the level, and I can't remember who said it, but in the first or second Faster video,
Oh, yeah.
they just talk about how like Rossi's like, normal doctor, you hurt your hand, you sprain your hand, doctors say 6 weeks, no work, And he goes, they're not motorcycle people.
No.
They're not motorcycle people.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, it's like I flew to Ting probably the year after that happened. Got picked up by the same dude, the Camry, drove to outpatient, had surgery, hung out for a week, and then flew to Road America and raced.
And also the thing I'd say about that is that changed my entire perspective on how you need to take care of yourself medically in a trauma-related injury, because what JP did for me, I've done to like 3 people.
Yeah.
Like, hey, do not do, like a buddy of mine is in an industry where his hands are super important, and he got a hand injury, broke 2 bones at the top of his hand. And he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to a general local doctor. I was like, dude, you live in St. Louis, don't you dare, dude. So like, yes,
I've done the same though. I'm like, dude, whatever you do, just call him. Just call my guy. Just call him. Like, I've done it to him.
Yeah.
I'm like, just call him. Please just get a second opinion. Because you just, I mean, dude, especially if you have surgery. Like, I use Doc Henry.
Yeah.
And
he's legit. He's out of Houston, right?
Yeah, he's Colin Edwards, boy. And dude, I never took a painkiller for my collarbone.
Yeah.
Like, it was so good. And I'm not just saying that, but I've had great experience with him. And just like what you said with Ting and other doctors, they just get it. They just know that you're like a different specimen.
And I think it's motorcycle riders is for sure at the extreme, but like high level athleticism, they understand it. And I think one of the biggest things with a doctor like that is like trust of intuition, because sometimes when you're out, you can't be asked a question about what you would like to do. And sometimes they have to make decisions. And I've, firsthand had friends who like the surgery went south because the doctor that just took a decision that's like, well, he'll still be able to use his arm in his 60s and 70s if we do this, but like not like, can I use it proficiently for the next 15 years specifically? Like that's kind of the more important question.
Yeah, they know you're racing.
So when you were, prior to that,
Yeah.
like, were you doing anything else? Like, do you attribute like your ability to do that acrobatic stuff?
Funny
and all that kind
stuff.
of thing?
Like, so like just, I was into like Games by James, like spinning like plates, like, like weird craft stuff, like Indo board. Like I could kill it on an Indo board, like switch threes on an Indo board, like I would just like be on my computer on, what an Indo board is? Like,
yeah.
I'd be like on my computer, like spinning a plate on my Indo board, just like cruising. And this is just in my room doing homework. It's not like a thing of like,
So you just had big balance?
just balance stuff. And then bicycles. I never raced BMX. I never got, no one around me was really into that. So my dad was into road cycling a bit, but like I was on a bicycle, 6-7 days a week, building 20-inchers, riding wheelies, learning kind of not like manuals. I didn't really learn manuals on a bicycle. I learned how to do like wheelies with the brake, which in hindsight would have been great to learn both, because I still struggle with that category. But I skateboarded a little bit, was terrible. Did some traditional sports, but not really. But I definitely, when I started seeing the extreme sports, the X Games, the Travis Pastrana deal, I was like, I like that. And then there was the road racing thing that really was like, maybe I like that more. And there was the intersect where I spent that period of time road racing.
Yeah.
I saw you at Salt Lake. I think that's
Yep.
well, even before that. Did you do Rookies Cup, or did you do a tryout?
So I did a Rookies Cup tryout.
Where?
It's a Barber.
Okay, so
And-
no, I don't.
Yeah, so I
AMA
did.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I
but
thought-
you were that's when you were like before or after you were working with Jay.
So that was right during the beginning, I would say. Maybe this right during the beginning, because basically, dude, I wrote JP an email. And at the time, it might have been someone when the Star School was running the big rig that might have been a liaison
Nina.
type. Nina.
Nina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had wrote some messages basically like, I want to come to a racing school, or I think my dad had chimed in about it. And basically, can I do a stunt demo at lunch in exchange to go to your racing school? And I pitched him like a sponsor. And he was like, absolutely. And I was like, no way. He's like, you got to bring your own bike. But yeah, we can do that. We can put you in the school. And I don't know why he took a flyer on me, but I came down like green at this point on an SV650.
What track?
Perump.
Oh yeah, this is before us.
Yeah, came down to Perump. So came
No,
down
I
to
remember. I mean,
I wasn't there.
Came down to Perump, had a SV650, didn't know how to trail brake, wasn't really refined, but like I had certain innate abilities of like deep braking and just like not crashing, like being terribly out of place all the time, but not really crashing much. And it was because I was a stunt rider.
Yeah,
it was
a good feel.
He saw this, and I would just say it's interesting. So then I built a good relationship with him, and I started going to some schools, and then I started doing some road racing in the Midwest, and it was pretty quick, like SV650, CBR 600 in the same year to white plate. And then road racing went okay, because basically that was like a year and a half, 2 years before I did a couple AMA rounds. And the AMA rounds was interesting because it's like a huge reality check, like on your speed. But, road racing was interesting because I just was getting to the point where, okay, I can make $5,000-$6,000 a weekend stunt riding. And then the next weekend I can spend all of it road racing. And I did a bunch of spending. I did like self-funded, we were nationals for a while, self-funded CCS Midwest for a while on CBR 600s and then our 6s. Doing the national was when I realized like, holy shit, this is like way different, because when it came down to it, the best I ever did is like I won a handful of We Were Nationals and I top 10'd at New Jersey, but that was like just due to the attrition of the race. And as soon as you show up, I was like, all right, like there's a regional race here. I'll be maybe not top 1, 2, but top 3, 4 at CCS at Road America, like feeling good, getting some contingency. You show up for a national, and I remember like Leandro Mercado was like 4 seconds faster than I was. And I was like, 4 seconds?
Where is it?
I was almost the fastest guy last weekend.
Yeah.
Like what the hell?
I have this absolute vivid memory of me and you, Salt Lake, going through the S's like towards the last corner. I always have this memory. I don't know why, just because the Red Bull, at the time, I think it was a Red Bull helmet. And I just remember that, and I'm going, who the fuck is this?
Not front runner with a Red Bull lid.
And I'm like, I'm like, who is? And it had nothing to do with it, just because like you came in, left, and the thing is, I know who you were. Like I knew you, but I didn't know you on track.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who is it? And I remember after Colton, but I have this memory at Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Because I believe it was the Honda.
Yeah.
And I remember the pipe coming out at the beginning and the Red Bull helmet going through the last corner. And I was just like,
you were a speed and strength guy back then.
Speed and
yeah,
strength,
yeah.
speed
Well,
and
you had the
strength.
blue too. You had the blue.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
dude. I don't know. It was so it's so vivid.
Yeah.
Was it ever frustrating, like knowing how good you were? Like you were at that time, like the best stunt rider in the world, would you say?
In the nation, I mean, questionably at that time, the world championship level riding for those years was here. You know how like the World Series of baseball is here because the best baseball players in the world is here. That's kind of how stunt riding were, but when it really comes down to it, I got to call a spade a spade. Christian Pfeiffer was and always will be the best in the world for the entire lineage of time that I was riding. And there was a specific period of time when my interest level was going to more diversification, that there were some other guys like Bill Dixon and such who superseded me and even a handful of other guys. But it kind of depended on when I was fully bandwidth invested. I was at the top of the field.
Yeah.
And when I was diversifying bandwidth to do other things, I was always had a chance to be top spot, but I was doing other things. And that stunt riding community didn't always think too positively of that.
Yeah.
But they didn't understand this. They didn't understand that like it wasn't just I'm going to be stunt riding and that's it. I wanted to be like the best, most well-rounded motorcycle rider in the world. I wanted to be able to get a ride road racing and do the stunt riding. And when the Red Bull deal came along, I was super stoked about that because that was pinnacle goal at the time. It was like, I remember being like, I did a interview for like Cycle News at the time, which was non-endemic for stunt riding relatively. And they're like, what's your biggest goal in your career? I was like, to be a Red Bull athlete. That was like it. It wasn't like be the champion again. It was like, I want to be a Red Bull athlete. The people I look up to are that. And road racing was amazing. And the thing that I'm so thankful about, because it taught me an incredible amount of discipline, because when you start spending that much money to be there, there's no showing up late. There's no not fine-tooth comb every finite detail of the mechanical ability of the motorcycle, because, you have a mechanical on Sunday and you drove cross country and spent, $5-6 grand of money that you barely earned, because if you make 6 and spend 6, what's in the middle? You're kind of like in this situation of whatever. And, that sometimes things got better, like Larry H. Miller Superbike Challenge, and we were a national, and I was doing some contingency stuff for a while that softened the blow, but nothing ever took over. Nothing like, not like Robbie Jensen style, like some of those like figured out the formula to just crush like that. So it was good, but all of a sudden my program went from like Astrovan and some stunt bikes that were cleaner than most to we're going to start competing on race bikes. I'm like, I want my race bikes and my stunt bikes to be visibly the same. I want them to look the same with the exception for the bare essentials that's needed. I want my crash cages up and tidy. I don't want any of this steel, big jungle gym stuff on here. I want trim. I want aluminum. I want carbon. I want race bikes so that when I get off the track and get onto my stunt bike, I am riding hard and fast and aggressive. And that's where I kind of grew. When I won the national championship, I had no style. I just had tactical like ability to execute all the tricks. Style came after I started road racing.
Oh, wow.
Because it's like,
is that what taught you?
It's just what really taught me to charge, like figuring out, going to a national, to a track that you've only been to once before, never before, and then getting smoked and qualifying in free practice because you don't have that ability to throw down 2 laps and then be like, all right, we're good. That was something that like I had to learn. And what that taught me is if I'm going to a stunt riding event, every second I'm riding is qualifying. So it's not like, oh, let me try this out and like let me talk to this guy in the hot pit. It's just ride as hard as I possibly can for my time window, go back, assess what I did, assess what should change. And then it just got to the point where I won't say it became easy, but it became easier because you just like I had a plan, I had a routine run, I knew what I was going to do. I was building a repertoire, an aesthetic, a preparation that stunt riding didn't have. Stunt riding didn't have a roll-in pitbull wheel tree. Like I'm just gonna swap wheels all weekend, not even change tires. It was different, and that is what.
So you brought that
over from road racing,
and nobody else had it.
No, I mean I'm not saying there weren't guys that had like cleaner setups.
But like that race.
Yeah.
So you brought what you learned in the racing paddock, you brought to stunt riding.
Oh, for sure. Okay. We're in Phoenix. The bike's running flat. Like you should have seen it when we broke out a laptop at a stunt event. You know what I mean?
Or something.
Yeah. Like it's running flat up here. We're at
got the auto wheelie on.
Yeah, we got elevation. I just remember people coming up and they're just like, "What are you doing? Like, the bike's running flat off the bottom up here," and they're just like, "What? A tuner?
You can change that?
You can change that?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
so
"Well, you can
funny.
soften the blow. You can, and it was, and then because of that, it's like, all right, I'm stunt riding and I'm trying to procure sponsorship for road racing at the same time. So I start working with Bazaz, and Bazaz now is tuning and doing software for both bikes. Like, how is that not beneficial? That like rising tide raises all ship. The better my equipment got, the better my stunt riding equipment got. And then it got to the point where it's like, every time you show up, the people you're riding against are like, is this a new bike? Like, no, it's the one I ride all the time. It's a bike. And it's just like mint, spotless. They're like, there's not a scratch. They're like, well, yeah, because I swapped the sliders and repainted it. And it was just kind of like a wow. And that's when it changed. And then progressively that just turned into everything that Garage 93 is, like the ultimate finite attention to detail, over the top, like blessing and a curse, right? Like there's things that I have OCD on that probably don't need the expenditure of time, but when I step back,
You think?
You really?
yeah. Well, you got
We were gonna ask, but we didn't.
but when I step away from the outside looking in, I'm like, that's how I want it to look.
Yeah.
You know, so like with what's happened now, so I went through, I feel like I've been through like 3 careers. Like I've been with Red Bull 17 years.
I was gonna ask that. You've
Yeah,
got to be
dude.
one of the
I just
longer
signed this year
athletes.
and then we have concluded 17 years together.
Wow.
So
Are you just like a lifer? Do they have a lifetime? I mean, what is
this
the,
last conversation was basically like we're pretty much there, because now at this point I do live demos for the event all over, for the brand all over the world. I do a lot of activations with MotoGP and F1 with Red Bull. I'm deeply invested in the Wings for Life, the nonprofit that they have.
Yeah.
I'm doing all those events, which is incredible. And I understand how a brand partnership works. So when it really comes down to it, like they supported my program, not just financially, but with outlook. Like, hey, what would you like? Like when I was stunt riding and they saw me win a couple times or win a couple championships or what the case was, they're like, what would you like to do? And you're like, this. And you're like, no. Where do you see this going? Like if you keep doing this every year, the same thing, how do you feel that's going to go? Like, how do you feel about going international? Do you think you want to compete international? Do you want to make video content in like exotic locations? Like, yeah, I would love to. At this point, it was yes to everything.
Of course,
17. Yeah, I'll do everything. Yes, let's go to Trinidad. Let's go to Cayman Islands. Let's go to Brazil. Let's go to Nicaragua. Like, let's go everywhere. That's amazing. So I quickly realized that like the partnership is because I'm a sales tool and I understand that. And if I can learn how to be the best that I can at my craft while utilizing my platform as a sales tool for a brand that's willing to back me, it helped me understand what the partnership is. And now at this point in time, you know, it could be no closer of a brand relationship. We work on amazing projects together. We have multiple media series that we've grown and ideated together through many, many years. And now it's like, I did the stunt riding, I did the road racing, I had some flat track time, which that was for my soul. And like really getting to the grit of motorcycle riding and control. And I just met the most amazing community of people and group through that whole side of things. And I'm super happy I spent that time flat track racing. And what it's turned into now is sharing everything I've learned through video format and also doing the live events that I do. It's crazy because my channels last year received, on my channels alone, 227 million views.
wow. That is unreal.
Yeah. So it's now
Congrats.
things are at like a point where, you know, when I'm having a conversation with a company, it's like, it's not a if, it's this is the program I have, this is what I'm delivering, and these are the services that I'm offering to partner with. And I'm doing this project. I have this project planned for 2 years from now. So like a lot of the partners I'm bringing on, I'm more interested in a long-term relationship because I only have so many months in a year. If I want to do 15 events and 4 builds, that means that this project actually is 18 to 24 months away. It's not at the end of the year. So building like a longer format of that. And with the way that Instagram and TikTok and YouTube have gone between the content that I'm doing on both Red Bull's channels and mine, like the demand is like only growing. So we found a formula that works because we've done the long format stuff, which it has a perfect use case for doing long format YouTube content. But the short form multi-platform stuff is just, it's crazy.
It's bananas.
It's like all of a sudden you post a video and you're like, wow, this is doing great. And then you look back a couple days, you're like 20 million views. I'm like, how many people ride motorcycles? I'm like, I only have a couple 100,000 followers. And that's when I started realizing that the package that I'm assembling is everything that I've learned through riding motorcycles, but at a level that's done so attention to detail oriented that the majority of the people watching my content are no longer motorcycle people.
Yeah.
They're just
You've blown out.
Yeah, totally. When I look at the metrics and when I look at just the comments and the perspective they're coming, they're like, I don't even like motorcycles. Like, I just love
like the
your
way it is.
organization. I love how your stuff is like, this is soothing. This is relaxing. I'm getting messages like, me and my son watch these before bed, you know, like all these cool things where you're like, wow, that's so cool that it's like touching. And what I'm able to do is keep practicing my craft and granularly putting together like concept is to do this. Goal is to execute this many pieces of content. The payoff is I have the motorcycle to either compete in this or participate in this video project. And along the way, we're producing, 18 to 24 content pieces for 3 different channels at the same time. So, but
how do you come up with all the time?
it's fully allotted. Husband, wife, husband, father, career, trying to stay fit. That's a little bit more important now. Like you guys are in the same boat, young 30s. It's just, you can't just coast anymore. It's like, you got to grind a couple times a week. Otherwise, things start falling apart. But
do you find it hard to like still, cause you're not competing anymore really, right?
No. And I haven't competed since like 2013.
That's what we were talking about. Yeah.
I was
2013.
going to ask you about, but first I want do you have a team?
Garage 93.
So, do you like?
So I have a team of people. I have a team of great.
So how many people? Like, do you just have one videographer, or do you have like a whole? Do you have a?
Okay, so
we have a crew.
So there's a multitude there. So when it comes down to the back of house of my scheduling, and I'd say I'm like the yes man. I can get people together, concept an idea, get things to a point of execution. And when it comes to like the back end bandwidth of like aligning or at least making sure that I'm doing what I said I can do, my wife has a great part to do with that. So when it comes to the back end logistics of communication on shipping and receiving, scheduling, invoicing, things of that, we're a team in the nature of we understand the strengths that she has versus what I have. I'm a doer. I can wake up, I can grind all day long, but the back end organization is not necessarily my strength point. I then have 2 videographers. When I do my long format series, I have 2 videographers. It's Catherine Appel. She runs the DP for the YouTube long format series, and Jack Parker. They're super, super talented. And I concepted the long format stuff with Catherine pretty close to the beginning. Not quite first. The first time I ever did one of the bike builds was actually with Supermoto. Just kind of how things came together with that. And then all of the stuff you've seen socially is done from my videographer, Jack. So we shot all of that last year, all on iPhone, 100%.
Whoa.
Wow.
And it wasn't like, let's just pick it up. It's like, no, I'm going to buy 2 iPhone 14 Pros with rigs and microphones, and these are content phones. And we shot the whole thing vertical format, and the idea was, how do I bring the cost of production down as low as possible so I can do as many of these as possible? Because long format, full K, Reds, sound guy, etc., it just exponentially gets so expensive that I'm not able to do a project because the cost got too high.
Yep.
So then we got to a point where it's like, okay, the content's now doing many, many millions of views every time we do it, but 30% of the comments are asking for long format YouTube. What happened to the YouTube series? Is it done? It's like, well, it's really tough to describe, but it's not done. It just costs a lot of money. And sometimes you can't procure funding to do both of which.
Yep.
So then this year we did things differently where we actually we started off the year just shooting vertical format when we were kind of getting the ball rolling. And then what we did is we shot basically just with the crop on the viewfinder of an R5 so that everything is shot social first, but with the widescreen, so that basically, like the project that I just finished with the Indian, starting on Tuesday, there'll be a 15-minute episode every Tuesday for 5 weeks. Wow. Imagine if a video is 15 minutes long and it's actually like 10 minutes of ASMR. It's not me talking. It's just the long format. And there's a couple pullouts between that is me working, describing what I'm doing, what the goal is, what's happening, why I'm doing this. So it's not fully narrative, but it, with as little input as possible, kind of lets people know what's going on, and then it just lets the work flow. And I'd thought about back and forth because the original series style on YouTube I was hosting. I was like actually narratively hosting the whole thing. And I was like, are people really just willing to watch like just the actual process?
Yeah.
They are. It's one of those things, and it kind of naturally built its way into this.
It's definitely on the up.
It's totally on the up. And the whole reason that I started doing that ASMR content stuff 2+ years ago from the original style was I would go down these car detailing rabbit holes, dude. I would literally be like watching. I don't even care what kind of car. I'm just like watching, mesmerized by these car detailing videos, and I was like, I gotta do it. I'm gonna do a bike washing video. I did a bike washing video and it crushed. And I was like, I'm gonna do a bike teardown video. And then, you know, there was varying levels of execution, but we kind of got the formula down. And now it's to the point where there's more brand partners coming on board. Some are manufacturer related, some are just product placement related. But we have a schedule of events, so we're gonna do 4 of them this year. And it's gonna be something in continuum that I have a lot of. I have a lot of confidence that it's going to live very well on both platforms.
So do you treat it like a 9 to 5 though? Like you like
it's a full-time job.
But as far as like actual hours, you're like, okay, we're done at 5. Because like I feel like these things are like the kind of things where it's just like you just work for like
So basically, you know, and relationship management with the household is the toughest part of this, because when it comes down to it, like I'm going to be honest with you, finishing the R1 was like getting out the door for Daytona. I had a deadline. I knew when I was going to go to it. I felt like I'd been working for months. But when it comes down to it, it's still 2 a.m. and I'm loading up with lights. You know, I'm like, what did I do? I worked so hard. Why is I literally driving overnight to get there, or whatever the case is at the time? But
so it doesn't because it.
So here's how it works. When you watch one of those builds,
dude, it feels like you got it good.
Yeah.
Man.
So
it feels like it's not 6 months.
Well, it's 33, 34 days.
Okay.
So from the time, so when I say 6 months, it's like pitch the idea, know what I'm going to do, buy some stuff. Some parts I pre-order, but I conceptually, I totally am like, all right, I know what I'm going to do. It's coming in the door. But basically, if it takes more than a month, it costs too much money to make it. Because
the other thing is, how do you not just have shit everywhere? Like you tear the stuff down, you Cerakote, you clean everything. I mean, I don't even know how you clean everything.
Well, come on over when it's happening, because it is everywhere. I mean, organization, you've seen the spot. We're in LA. It's not big, right? It's enough of what I need, but we had this conversation earlier. I had to come to grasp many years ago with the decision to live in Santa Monica proper. Means I'm not going to have the 60-foot pole barn. It's just different. It's different here, but I live in Santa Monica. We like it. My wife and daughter love it. I enjoy it very much. I'm close to Red Bull, close to the gym. School system's great. So we're tiny and mighty, you know. And there's been talk, and there was like there was a network that was talking to me about doing some partnership, possibly like actually full episodic, right? So do we set up a studio? So that means, okay, so then if we have a studio, is the audience that is currently this interested in having a peek in your life, in your garage, and the relatability of what you have, as interested in a full sterile studio? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. So that's one thing too that, you know, we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. But I do think there's like a certain amount of, even though I have a lot of nice stuff in here and toolboxes and lever rack, it's just a 20 by 22 don't It's not like
hey, don't give
crazy.
It away, man, dude.
Yeah.
It feels like it's huge.
Huge,
yeah.
But
It also makes it like everyone thinks that they can do it.
2-car garage. I mean, you know,
I watch your videos sometimes. I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna start Cerakoting shit.
Yeah,
and then I like watch you do it. I'm like, there's actually no shot I have that much patience to do anything.
Dude, I don't know why. I was telling him on the way. I was like, dude, there's this one video. All your videos are tits, but like this one of you fucking changing your oil and your air filter and your
you should line
your
up every
sprinter
socket.
and your sprinter, and I'm like, this motherfucker is doing one of these videos for fucking changing his oil, and he's detailing the whole engine and everything, and I'm like, dude. I'm driving through like the middle of nowhere to a race, going like, "What the hell is going on, dude?"
Just tweaking, man,
dude.
Yeah, You know what Brad Baker calls it? He calls it super pimping. You know, you don't need to, but sometimes you just decide to just go super pimping.
This has got to be a perfect break.
It's a great time for it. Have you watched at least one of our podcasts?
Yeah.
So you know about our Law Tigers Tech Tip?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this segment is Law Tigers Tech Tip. The Law Tigers are America's motorcycle lawyers. A motorcycle accident isn't something you ever expect, but you need to be prepared in case they do happen. Obviously you're a mastermind at doing tech tips.
Tip for guys.
For a living, you're giving tech tips.
Okay,
so what's your number one?
So this is my number. So this is like to keep somebody safe in a time of like panic. Okay, this is the tip that I'm going to give, because if I had a riding school, which I will eventually have, one of the first things I want to have people do, because I think a riding school that I want to have, because everyone's always like, you should start riding school, wheelie school. It's like, no, I want to start at be controlled school. Like,
Yeah.
what's be controlled? What does that even mean? Is that racing? It's literally go to a parking lot that has a 2 grass exit, 2 gravel exit, 2 dirt exit on a street bike, and ride through that parking lot at 15 miles an hour. And as soon as you get to that grass and gravel, I want you to figure out how fast you can stop on a sport bike, on a motorcycle, because you don't know. I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 guys do not know if they run off on the grass, how much, how little, how front brake, how they can put before they're either going to lose traction, or you can actually run off and just slow down just fine. But nobody knows that. Like, nobody is like, I don't want to say nobody, but most people, when they run off the road, they're just like, God, take the wheel. You know, it's just one of those things.
Even
and
just
if you can just find a parking lot with some type of non-curb runoff to gradually increase the speed until you get to I'm scared to go on the grass speed, to understand what that means. Because I'm sure you guys are great. You guys have ran up track 100+ mile an hour on the grass, right? It's crazy. But you can most of the time steer the ship slowly but surely and grab the brake, lock up, let off the brake, grab the brake,
it's a dance.
It's a dance. And some people, even at the top of the grid in MotoGP, don't have it. And some do. You know, Mark Marquez is on the limiter, wah! You know, and you got some guys who just fall on the front, and you're like, what happened to him? Must have not been riding dirt track, you know. But that's the tech tip. Know your boundaries of traction off asphalt. You know, you don't have to be a master, but you got to know, if I get pushed off the road and it's a gravel to grass shoulder, what does a gravel grass shoulder feel like at 50 miles an hour? You kind of got to know, and it's a bummer to learn on the day.
What's the rear brake even?
Yeah,
how's that thing work?
Yeah, how did that thing work? yeah.
That's why
smoothly.
I made a bunch of my guys do Johnny Lewis's school. When he had
it's
it out
huge.
Here. Now when they all run off at Chuckwalla, they're like, thank you.
Because dude, it's crazy. Because I learned how to use stunt riding is rear brakes all day, every day. So I just have finite rear brake control, and I'm super thankful. Jimmy Wood is the one who got me into riding dirt track.
Oh yeah.
And he saw you should do this. You can't ride a dirt bike that well. That doesn't matter. I've seen what you can do. You should do this. And it just was amazing, because dirt track is something where if you're going to say, I'm a well-rounded motorcycle rider, I feel like I can control myself in various situations, you need to ride dirt track. Motocross for sure, but dirt track just has this certain not hooked up vibe that to this day, fun. I use that skill set all the time.
Dude,
on the bagger, on a dirt bike, on my sport bike. It's crucial, man.
Yep.
Well, that's our tech tip from Law Tigers. If you or someone you know is ever injured in a motorcycle accident, always call Law Tigers first. The services are of no cost to riders, and they fight to get riders taken care of and back on the road. With Law Tigers, you never ride alone.
1-800 Law Tigers, baby.
There you go, Jimmy. Thanks for that one. That's a good one.
That's a great one.
Kind of want to go back to my question before. So when you show up to the races or anywhere, I guess, with knowing what you have as a skill set, generally speaking, I mean, obviously we can ride bikes very fast on the track, but fundamentally skill set on a bicycle or motorcycle rather, I would say you probably are a bit more talented than we are.
It's just more rounded.
It's
just a different, we've ridden dirt track together, and we've been on the racetrack together. And I think, honestly, the times we've been on the racetrack together, you guys have probably had the upper hand on me, I would imagine.
But my question, I guess, is it frustrating when you show up to do something, when you go to race, when you went to go road racing, was it frustrating? When you just go flat track, it's why aren't these amazing skill sets that have?
So flat track, I didn't have that sensation. But road racing, I had that sensation. And I had a very specific pinnacle moment where I was doing demos in Indianapolis in 2008. And in 2008 was also kind of when I was road racing the most. And I wasn't road racing there, but I was watching 250 GP practice in the infield.
Yep.
And I remember just watching guys go through the turn. And there was a gradient of skill. I'm not looking at the timesheet. I'm not looking at anything. But there's a gradient of skill. You're watching them grab the downshift, pick their entry point, most are within the same margin of space making that move. And I was physically, they're a similar body to me. Mentally, they're athletic like I am. There's no reason that I can't do exactly that exactly then. There's no reason that I can't do exactly what he's doing on his 250 GP bike if I had that bike in that situation with that preparation. And the tough part about road racing was I always had plenty fine equipment, But it's one thing to have fine equipment. It's another thing to have A-grade equipment. And it's a third thing to be factory equipment. Because factory equipment doesn't mean the equipment's factory. It means the whole support system behind that bike at that level is there to exacerbate your skill set to the highest degree. And I struggled a lot, specifically in that road racing time, because I just remember being like, and a lot of these guys are great guys, but like I remember being in the pits and, there's like kids that are racing at the time. It was Super Sport, but like post Bostrom Super Sport, like I can't remember like the DMG Super Sport, Daytona Sport bike, the weird era.
Yeah, Danny Eslick was on Geico or on the Buell.
Shout out Danny Eslick. Yeah, just winning championships like he was born to do it. And I remember like cleaning the inside of my oil pan because there was some like tech difference that I had to make, and I just remember like. At this point in time, I think I had a small motorhome or a bigger van or something of that nature. But like I'm slaving away working on the bike. I'm slaving away along with my dad on everything, and I'm like watching like kids with factory rides and Chris Clark's of the world like playing on bicycles and fucking around and just doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I literally have to work like till midnight tonight if I want to race tomorrow. And it was just different.
Yeah,
like having good equipment. I felt good. I felt confident, but it was definitely frustrating. And I'm not blaming it on equipment, but it was frustrating to not feel like I had the opportunity to reach the potential of the skill set investment that I have to maybe see what that would turn into. And I thought that was going to change a little bit with Rookies Cup. And I was super happy for the Rookies Cup tryout. That was like about that time because I posted a top 10 time at the tryout and was like, oh, we're locked in. And then I remember getting a phone call from Danny Walker, and I held it against him and didn't talk to him for like 3 years after this because of this. I never even told him this, and I could tell him this now. He called me, and he was like, you had a great outing, but you're too tall.
What?
Really?
Yeah.
That was a stigma back in the day.
Because they're like, you're 5'11", 6 foot, and 16. Like, that's a pretty big gamble because worst case scenario, best case scenario, you're 6 foot. Worst case scenario, you're, on the more. And I was like, but I went to the event. I was professional. Yeah. I spoke to every representative that had any insignia of Rookies Cup. I did my due diligence. I did all the things right. And then I was like, top 10 time. I was like,
you're in.
I'm in, not in. Too tall. And I just remember being like, I was mad. I was mad. I was genuinely internally mad for years.
Was that for the 2008 one or the 2009 one? Like the first year or the second year? Because they canceled it obviously the second year, but
it would have been the year that Toriano passed away.
So the first year.
Yeah. And not that that's what makes me vividly remember that year, but I remember him and that crew of guys. And a lot of those guys, had successes also throughout that afterward. And a bunch of them went to TLD originally, or
living the dream, LTD,
and stuff like that. So I definitely remember seeing some of that stuff.
I was one of them.
Okay,
I made it. On my size.
And
all these years later,
relationship management is part of it. And honestly, I don't hold it against him now, but in the position of choosing the guys,
it's a good old boys club.
Yeah, it's like I grew up racing against his uncle. And I know he's got some fast people in his camp where he lives in Georgia, and these family rides dirt track and whatever. And I just came from a stunt rider from Minnesota, zero in except the ins I made stunt riding. And even then, they're like, fucking stunt
rider. Were you with Red Bull at the time?
Yeah.
Oh, you were?
That was my signing year. So that was my signing year. So I had a relationship with them. I wasn't branded at the event, but it was that same year was my signing year.
Yeah. It's so weird. I mean, I feel like we run into stories like that. Was that like a pivotal moment in your
I charged
life?
harder for 2 years on the road racing because I was mad about it. And those were also the revelation years that actually, even not reaching pinnacle success in this, what it did for my stunt riding and career path was fantastic. Because I think it got to the point when the last road race I did was AMA Supersport New Jersey 2012. And
I was there. I was
in it. No?
Dude,
I was in it. I was Rapido.
Oh, dude, I got hit so hard. Pascal Picot, does he have a kid?
No. Not that I know of.
Or Canadian?
Oh,
Zoke?
No, not Zokes.
Pascal Picot has a nephew or something, some French Canadian.
Was it?
I still hold it
Emerson
again.
Connor.
Dude,
I remember.
I got taken out on the second lap. Super Sport. I had already turned into one, and I got taken out like tire marks on the speed hump.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
And it hurt bad, and the bike was like munched, like when the fairing stay rips off and the body, just like full on. Just
I
full
had
on.
one of those this year.
And then I just remember being, I saw the photo. Shit was everywhere. It's so cool.
No,
Did you side brake? Did you side brake the wheel out of the thing?
Dude, let me just say it was not cool.
Yeah, I'd love to Cerakote that thing.
Yeah, send it on over.
Imagine a factory HD Cerakoted the fuck up. But
I
going
know,
back, going back though, I think the other thing is timing, right? Like
It's all about timing.
Not just timing, but time, right? Like, and no offense to this guy, but Tito Rabat is a classic example with having enough money and enough time to be a 2X world champ.
Yeah.
Right? That dude, and he's super talented.
Yeah.
But he had enough time on great equipment.
Yeah.
And it's like, I go back and I have this story all the time. Like, somebody, like, if you had unlimited dollars, what's the first thing you do? Buy the best motorcycle and just see what I have. Like, I don't feel like a dyno run on myself. Like, I just want to know that I have unlimited time to try to see exactly what I have on the best stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It would have been cool to know because I don't know what that potential is. I know the fastest and best I've ever gone and ridden, but I don't know what a truly locked in test with a team on A grade stuff that you're familiar with, really just like squeezing blood out of a rock, like on that ragged edge of perfection. But, that was one of those things that journey definitely like leathered the skin, but it also made me aware of like so many things that were important to like turn this into a career. Because basically I was like, I had to look back on it, but a couple of years ago I was like, holy shit, I just was me for a living. I was like, I figured out a way to isolate the skill set I have and then take that skill set out of the sport that got me into it. And then because of the way that content and media has become, been able to just turn that into the career.
Yeah. It's crazy because we were talking about it. We're like, technically all three of us do it for a living. But for you, you've really been able to get out of I don't want to say like your starting point. Like, we're still heavily in it, whereas you've been able to break the bubble, break the mold, and create that pipeline. Create your own lane. And it's something like you do it all, but you don't do it all kind of deal.
Yeah, it's the question is like, what do you do? I'm like, oh man, where do I start?
You're an influencer.
I ride motorcycles for a living. Dude, the influencer thing. Speaking of that, so it's crazy because and just the way the performance has been with everything the past couple of years, it's put things into a little bit different atmosphere, like just with like invites and things of that nature. But I remember going to events that I was invited to as an athlete, and it was the time when influencer and athlete was really a separate thing. And I remember being at these events and being like, gosh, these spode influencers. God, and you're like in the same bus and staying at the same hotel and like you're part of the same crew and you're like, they didn't earn this. You're like, I spent my whole life like grinding every day, but respect given, it's a grind also. It's just different. It's just different. But at the ripe age when I was younger, I was just like, get these guys out of here.
Well, I think there's also been a shift too, where it's like now people don't just want some random person talking shit. Like they actually want somebody who's grinded.
Yeah, they want it. They kind of want a professional in the field. And if that field is even a field you made, be good or be good at it. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where it's like they like following someone who really vested their knowledge base in that category.
And it's not easy. Like, creating content
it's so hard.
It is so difficult. Yeah. Like, it is not, I'm sure there's people that do it that it's just supernatural to do, but like the whole deal is a fucking production.
Yeah,
it's pretty much got to get good at just talking to yourself, which is like a really weird.
Yeah,
just talking to yourself.
And I think the thing is, I get so many positive comments and so many positive feedback. But the thing that's crazy, the amount of negative stuff that I get
out, like
that
like,
they just like.
Why is this dude done cut his nails?
Yeah, or just like anything. Like, they'll say anything, or they'll be like, "You're an idiot." Like, okay, you watched the video. I don't know what to say, but it's just funny. All of a sudden, But if you've never put out a piece of content, even one, you just don't know that like, oh, well, I just watched a 1.5-minute video. Like, how long could that take? It's like, well, you're talking negatively about something that probably took someone 6 to 8 hours to do, and then 2 to 5 hours to edit, and another hour and a half to think about and scheme and make a caption for and figure out a schedule for. So I think anytime anyone makes a piece of content, there's no room to say anything negative because the amount of time it took just to get it up, to do it.
Dude. Yeah. And I think that's one thing we've learned in podcasts, just talking with people.
Yeah.
Right. Not content, but it's in the same realm, right? I feel like me and Corey have a full different respect on just people, right? Before you'd be like, dude, what is he doing?
Mm-hmm.
And then like after having this podcast and talking to people, you kind of get that like, dude, I've been there. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I understand. I could see it.
Yeah.
I could see where you're at, kind of deal.
I think the thing about that that's so interesting, and this is a more life perspective that came later because, like, when you're young and you're trying to chase ride motorcycles, like, the amount of stuff that you put the blinders on in life, too. Oh, dude.
Everything.
Like, friends' birthdays
Dude,
and
everything.
general...
Prom.
Yeah, all of it. All of the things that people kind of idolize and think about. I think the one thing that's been nice, like a later in life period, and now like I'm in an area where I'm with a community of people that aren't motorcycle community. I'm like in the real world population. I live in an area with a school district, and we have friends and things that are totally outside this world. And the thing that's interesting when you're talking to someone 50 years old, doesn't really matter the age. It's like, wow, you got up and put yourself together every day for 50 years. No matter what genre you are, your career choice is, like that takes a lot of work. So if you have a skill set on top of that, a cool house on top of that, whatever the case is, that's amazing. But just making it, is a lot of work, So I think the one thing is there's not really much reason to be negative for anybody because like pretty happy with what I got. I don't need to tell anybody else to not be happy with what they have. And that's what social media is tough about because every once in a while you start doom scrolling and you find yourself just like, someone did something stupid. You're wanting to like take that jab, but then you're like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it just takes effort to do it. You're like,
you could
It takes
not
just as
do
much
it.
effort to just
The thing I've been
ignore it.
doing, like,
and it sits.
yeah,
It sits with
if
you.
I
You're
see
like,
someone do something like really, really stupid, and not like I'm trying to be their dad, but maybe I have like some insight that might help. I'll send them a DM.
Hey, man.
Like, hey, I saw this, just like, could be this. And if they tell me to F off, great. Or if they're like, sweet, thank you, also great. But it's a lot more internally positive than being like, person,
Dude.
you're an idiot. I get that one all the time, and I'm like, because of why?
Yeah.
I'm
social's
like, what
weird.
marker do you have? Yeah.
Going back to your Red Bull, when that
Mm-hmm.
whole deal started out, like, what was that like getting that call, I guess? And what was it actually like? Was it like a full on?
So shout out Jeff Hannon. He's the one who
Yeah.
believed in my program. He was way back in the day, and he was very involved with Rookies Cup. Jeff Hannon's OG.
That's so funny because Hannon, they own the kart track we still ride at in New York.
Dude, I knew that he went west to
What?
do the kart track.
OVRP, his brother, is the one who runs, and their family owns the kart track.
Yeah, because when he left Red Bull, it was kind of like family needs help back home, and I remember that. He was a super
his
super
dad
good
got
dude.
Sick and
So well, that's amazing. But he Red Bull wanted to get into stunt riding because they had Christian Pfeiffer in Europe, and Christian Pfeiffer is like, just no big deal. Like, I won Ayresburg a couple times, European Trials champion like 10 times. I should get into stunt riding and just like win the world championship like 3 times in a row. Like, this guy is like, watching him load a motorcycle is like more impressive than anything anybody else can do. And you're just like, I watched him like load a BMW F800 in the back of a Penske truck with no ramp, and the truck was parked against a wall, and he was stuck at a venue, and he like put it on his hip and kick wheelied it up, and then like held the front brake and did a burnout and pushed it, and then like walk and rode a full-size BMW up the back of a Penske truck. And I was just like, what just happened right now? So he's the best, and Red Bull loves him. He's amazing, amazing guy. And he was someone who took me under his wing my first couple of years at Red Bull. But basically, they wanted a U.S. Christian Pfeiffer. They wanted someone that is respected in the industry, is a dominant force in the competition field, but is activatable, can do these events, can bring a welcome to the world of Red Bull experience to any footprint that you'll give them that's an asphalt footprint. So if that's, somewhere in Southern California, if it's at MotoGP, if it's on a takeoff ramp for a Flugtag, like we want to activate what our brand is, our brand ethos, but we're having trouble finding a stunt rider that kind of is what we want.
Clean cut in the whole.
Yeah. They were kind of looking for that specifically. And they told this to me afterward. It was very endearing to hear and such, but they actually were thinking about not getting in because they title sponsored the first full season of XDL, but they didn't have an athlete, and they were probably going to not procure an athlete and stop sponsoring the series because they do not sponsor series that they do not have athletes competing in. And then I came from a van in Minnesota, and it was the right place at the right time. They sponsored the event. They didn't have an athlete. I was in the hot seat. I literally verbally said that my dominant life goal was to become a Red Bull athlete.
No way.
At the event. And they had the Red Bull double-decker bus there, and I met with them afterward. And this wasn't like signed, sealed, delivered, but it was like, hey, you just won. We like where your head's at. We like the relationship that you and your dad have. You seem like this is something you're going to keep doing, because there's a lot of risk in investing in somebody. Sometimes they could be in and out. And they brought me out to Laguna Seca 06. GP.
Yep.
And they were like...
Nicky Hayden won.
Nicky Hayden won. So my first ever MotoGP race, I got to watch it like in an adjacent suite with like Tom Cruise and Michael Jordan at MotoGP.
It was right at turn 4, right?
Like unlimited, like Haagen-Dazs ice cream bars and like sushi, like all this stuff that to me, 15 years old, coming from Minnesota, I've never really experienced that life. I remember they put me up in, hotel, like some 5-star hotel, like
the Embassy Suites back in the day, just 17 stories.
Dude, it was, I can't even know. It was like the Carmel something Inn. It was this ocean overlook. And I was just, my dad or I had never experienced that level of anything before. So it was just totally taken back. And like, we drove an S10 from Minnesota to the valet at whatever 5-star hotel in Monterey to like, here's the keys to my S10.
With your bike in the back?
With my bike in the back of an S10 with a tarp over the back, and got to go to GP. And this was basically, in hindsight 2020, this was a test. How are you doing with our people? Like if we bring you to an event for a weekend and just say, have yourself a day, like, do you get along with the community of people? It was, they wanted me to they took me to Hot Pit. I was just like, Rossi's bike, just like, just like, oh my gosh. Like I didn't really have much confidence then to like ask anybody for a photo or anything, but I was just kind of taking it in. So went to MotoGP, and during MotoGP, Jeff Hannon was like, hey.
So you don't have the deal yet?
Don't have the deal yet because I was 15. So this motorsports athlete, at the time things changed slightly, but their intention was to sign me as soon as I turned 16. So later on this year, I think GP's in July.
So no hat, no nothing?
No nothing.
Okay.
Just
as a guest.
Come on down. Yeah,
come
on down. Probably like speed and strength. Yeah. and so came on down. The event was just mind-blowing, and just, I had never been to like a high-end team dinner before. And they're like, come out to dinner. And it was like Nicky Hayden was at dinner. Yeah. Like, are you kidding? I didn't say a word. I didn't say hi. Like, I was just kind of hanging out, kind of in disbelief that it was even an opportunity. And that there is where he had told me like, hey, so there's a rider, the European rider, who we'd really like to pair you up with for a couple events. And he's been with us for a long time with multi-sports, just to help you kind of understand like presentation, demo, like the demo side of things isn't just like, when I first started doing demos, it was like, all right, I'm going to rip wheelies and burnouts in a parking lot. And then it grew into like, no, a demo is a 12-minute performance of exactly this at 10/10 max output possible. So like understanding like what it's like to put on a show, put on a production. And January 1st that year is when I signed with Red Bull. So formally. So I was with the brand for that kind of
Learning.
that window, understand what it was, and then I signed then, and then a whole bunch of times since then, which is kind of crazy now at this point.
Was that like your actual, like, at that point were you looking at like a career stunt riding?
Yes. So at that point, basically
prior to the contract.
Yeah, prior to the contract. And I guess I don't mind talking numbers at this point because, like, I think that year I was like, I can make like 40 grand this year. Like if I, like I had a couple sponsors.
And that's big money as like a 15-year-old.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Big.
But
sick.
but you add up your expenses backwards, and you know the deal.
Yeah,
But everything always ends up being a wash those first couple of years. But on the horizon at that age, I like had 2/3 that secured, and the other third of that was swing of competition. You know, so I was like, this is coming for real. And I was starting to get to the point where I was starting to have those talks with my teachers, like, hey. We're gonna keep missing school.
Yeah.
All still, and I had agreements with certain teachers that if I stayed in the A's, they weren't gonna give me a hard time. But if I dropped down in grades, then the daily work was gonna become mandatory. Then like all these things, and I also had 2 teachers that were just total pricks and losers and cut zero slack and didn't just.
You miss tardy, you're done.
Just didn't even see it. Didn't even understand. Like, hey, this isn't like I'm just messing around. Like this is. I'm foundationally laying a career that's going to far surpass what I think that the education could here. Not that like I would like to follow a road of illiteracy, but just there's a huge potential that if I pump the brakes right now, it's like the worst time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually had this super cool teacher, my 9th grade science teacher, is like, hey, so how about this? I'll let you not do a single piece of work the entire semester, and you choose how much you would like to do or study, and your final grade on your final will be your standing score of your grade.
Damn. I couldn't do that.
And I was like,
fail.
There we go. Got it. But it was cool, like for him to be like,
I don't know if you could cram a whole year in an hour before. AB.
But he gave me the opportunity to be like, hey, are you down? I can save you a bunch of time. You don't have to do daily work for an entire semester, but your test score is going to be your test score.
What'd you get?
A-ish. Above A, I remember. I was pretty good at school.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one thing, too, that like...
you're smart.
Smart enough to do good at school. Because being good at school doesn't necessarily mean acute intelligence per category. It just means that you understand how school is designed. And as funny as it sounds... I figured out school quite well when I started traveling and understanding how the grading system works and what's required and kind of, to be honest, minimum effort for maximum success. Yeah. Wasn't doing AP, but was definitely, doing what I needed to do to make sure that I could graduate because I knew I wasn't going to go to college immediately. If I was going to go to college, it was going to be later, actually after I tried to give this a run and see how it went. And thankfully things worked out. It's honestly never too late for that because I have no... issue whatsoever with increasing any learning area like I do all the time now with YouTube University doesn't quite count, but like look at the things you can learn just through absorbing other people's knowledge base from all over the world.
So GP weekend 2006 you kind of get told like you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. When did you like who called you? How did it like give us a rundown? Red Bull, like that's
Red Bull told me here's the deal.
What's that first deal? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, 3-year deal. No, it was a 3-year deal, and it was $30,000 a year with a $10,000 competition bonus, which was a match bonus. So they would match any first, second, or third place at like 4 competitions or something of that nature. And at the time, I was like,
I'd do it for free.
I was like, this is like, at the same time you're in school. And you're like taking some of these like tests of like, this is how much you would make in this career field, So I was just like, wow. And then also, thankfully, my mom was like, hey, you're going to have to like figure out, like, we're going to have to get the CPA, like taxes, stuff like that. I didn't have any of that whereabouts. So we just, got someone in town to at least help manage what that was going to look like. And it's funny because life-changing amount of money, depending on where you're at in life, can be anything. And that was enough where I could be like, okay, now it isn't like I think this is our schedule. It's like the schedule is this. I can afford to do this schedule. I have at least this much to get to, this amount of competitions. And then if I do well, I can, have the, the bonuses go behind it. But I remember we signed, did I come out? I flew out. I flew out to sign, and I signed in person. My athlete manager took me to a restaurant in Santa Monica, and I stayed. They put me up at a hotel on the pier. I stayed one night. I flew home, and then the first thing I did was drive to Florida for competition, Stunt Wars, which at the time, XDL is the biggest series, but the biggest standalone was Stunt Wars. There was this guy, Bill Dixon, who he went down there a couple times, and if he won individual and the categories, like the longest stopping and some of the side categories, like, dude, there was times I think he pulled like 10 G's from that event, which,
Whoa, wow. So this was it.
This was good. Stunt Wars was a good single payday one. Like individual freestyle was like $5-6 grand, and there's a couple other events that are a couple $1,000s a piece for first and whatnot. You could put together a good weekend, and always was. But because everyone's coming from winter, everyone comes like a whole week early. So I got there, January and change, couple days in. They opened the track for practice on Wednesday. I get an overnight delivery on Tuesday from Santa Barbara from Airtrix. And on Wednesday morning, I have an AM, never had an overnight AM delivery package in my life. It's a Red Bull helmet. It smells like paint. I'm like so stoked. I get the helmet. I go to the track, go to practice. I pull the helmet out. People shit. Like some people are mad that I didn't tell them. Some people are just in disbelief that Red Bull got into stunt riding. And about 35 minutes later, I'm riding a wheelie down the track in second gear on my ZX6, and I throw it back because at speed, because it's a big speedway there, because it's fun to ride at a faster pace. I throw it back. I drag the tail, which at the time had a bar, like a hidden round one. Drag the tail of the bar, and I go to jump to high chair. And as soon as the 12 bar hits and I jump, the bike drops into neutral. I go over the handlebars. Smoke straight to the head, cracked in the backside of the helmet, fractured my hand in 2 places. First 30 minutes with a Red Bull helmet.
It's a way to break in a freshie.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And I remember being so intimidated to call Red Bull to tell them that I scuffed up the helmet. We went to the hospital, got the x-rays, turned out to just be little stress fractures in the hand. I was banged up, though. I was definitely hurt.
Yeah.
I remember color matching at like Target or Walgreens.
No way.
Sharpies. I got a silver Sharpie and a blue Sharpie. And I remember like pressing the tip over and over again over like the scratched up like carbon to make it look good again, like the rhombus. And I competed that weekend with that crashed helmet. And I never said a word to Red Bull because I was so scared to call and be like,
I need another helmet.
yeah, the first one, 30 minutes in, I took a digger, like one I still remember today. That's how hard it was, like that type of one. Yeah.
Is there anything worse though when like you crash in a freshie suit or a freshie helmet?
Everything. I mean, also not just the helmet. The bike was fresh off winter, fresh paint. Like the bike was just everything was to the nines for Stunt Wars January early event. And I just
your ego is like
I
huge
just
and then
munched
just goes,
everything, munched, and then I was too scared to ride the bike after that because of the transmission issue. So then we had to procure a motor in Florida, which had to buy a whole new ZX6, not new, used new ZX6 to pull the motor because I just had a mechanical failure. Totally worked me, and I was like super gun shy about like getting back on that bike or whatever. But yeah, that was like first Red Bull event.
No way.
Yeah.
How would you compare that, like the gun shyness of a mechanical stunt riding versus road racing?
Well, the one thing about stunt riding is you're a little bit more in self-control than team control. And even if you have someone helping you, you're a little bit more hands-on. The one thing...
worse in my case, I feel like.
And then double worse.
Yeah,
from
would
over
totally
here.
blind. Yeah, just double, yeah. And
You saw me set this place up.
and it was... the thing is... If you have a mechanic, so there's a couple things that can happen, and I only know they can happen because I've seen them. But for the most part, the thing about like doing a stoppie, especially if like let's say you're gonna roll 700 feet, 500 feet, whatever. I've the longest stoppie I've ever done is like 711. You got guys like Bill Dixon and who else was there? Like there was Corey was the guy from Wisconsin. DS. They're rolling 1,000+ feet. Mitch Adams, 1,000+ feet.
How
and
fast
more.
do you have to be going to do that?
Ripping.
Yeah,
We're
no,
talking
they're
like R1 rev limiter third gear.
What?
That's like 140, no?
Yeah, like flying, like so. And they're
Imagine tucking the front.
oh my god, dude. There's a guy equally as impressive, Jesse Toller, who was rolling 1,000+ feet off like 450 approach. So he went to like a drag racing school, got a sick Gixxer, like learned like because the thing is what happened at the competition for longest stoppie, they just kept shortening the approach. The longer it got, they just were forcibly shortening the approach. But you have a mechanical there, you lose the brakes, whatever, nothing happens. Psh, psh, psh. But you don't tie your front brake line up and you run a single down and a single over. I've seen someone's front brake catch onto the fender and grab the front wheel and like flip a stoppie at like maybe not 120, but like at least 85, 90.
What?
So if like, you know, a single down and a one over
Yeah.
brake line, if it flaps and catches behind the fender and then, so that'd be one. But honestly, as long as the bike doesn't shut off or go out of gear in a wheelie, you're pretty good. But if the bike runs out of gas, the bike shuts off, or like you don't have the tip over sensor disabled or something like that, or it drops out of gear, that's bad.
But
because
it's pretty hard to bounce back from that, I would imagine. Like,
You're probably not expecting it.
you're not expecting it, yeah. Because the one time I ran out of gas, which was my fault, like total like, Dad, I told you so, da 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 da. Like I you know, you're like I was doing a wheelie, I jump, I stand up, it's at night, I'm in Orlando, I'm on the seat, what? And it just shuts off, and you go over the bars like straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like dead still, or like you think you're lucky stars, you don't hit top down. You know, because like that can be a bad one. So that's one of the only ones that like you just don't want it to shut down. But at this point, I've thought about it. I'm so much stronger than I used to be.
Yeah.
That now, if something like that happened, I'd be willing to pull in the clutch and just grin and bear it. And I think I can manage not going over the front because I've done it enough times.
You know the feeling,
but the total blindside ones is like, and I've seen. I had one that happened, that one I was talking about, where I not only got thrown over the front, then the bike's coming after you, and then you're underneath the bike, and it's like, you know, the whole deal. But that's why I don't run crash cages. I haven't ran a crash cage since 2015.
I'd imagine they would fuck you up pretty good, right?
To me, how I look at it, crash cage is great. Like learning how to do circle wheelies, learning how to do slow technical riding stuff, or even drifting to not break your rear sets every time you drop the bike. I saw a guy crash, and the crash cage landed on his leg. And because of that, he had to get like external fixators and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? I could, because of road racing, I'll just put a new motor in. Like if I crash and it's that bad, I'll just put a new motor in. And then I stopped running crash cages in like 2014, 2015. Because now it's a bummer when I do go down, but the payout is longevity.
You still do?
No cage.
Yeah, but you don't still go down.
Rarely. Last time I went down was at Chuckwalla in the skid pad area because we were done shooting, and we weren't done. We were like, sun was setting, you know, that last 15 minutes of sun.
Golden hour.
And we were getting these super cool shots, like drifting from wet to dry, doing this Bridgestone T32 shoot. And the issue is we removed all the tires and we blew all the area that I was riding in. But now it's the end of the day and they're shooting in the opposite way. So my runoff area to slow down is where we blew all that sand. So I drifted, and as I came back and through to slow down when I grabbed the front, just whack. But I mean, no, it's super infrequent going down now. But I took those licks so often when I was so much younger that like I really am in tune with.
So like what? Sorry, go.
I was just gonna say, what percentage are you riding?
Dude,
at now?
I was just gonna ask that. I want to know. Like, is it like 10% or like?
So like when I do a demo, like I ride at 110% aggression, like aggression, energy, amplification. But maximum exertion of skill set is, 50, 60%.
Well, because you have to keep it somewhat controlled.
Not going to hit a barrier, not going to take someone out. Never going to happen. Not in my program. So the way I look at it is like...
It's kind of a movie program.
Yeah.
Can't crash.
Can't crash. You can't.
You'll never come back. You're dead.
Yes,
never.
exactly. Same thing on set. You can't crash on set. I mean... And if you do, you better have some good story, but you kind of get one. You kind of get one on set, and that's it as far as interpretation of safety and risk. So when it comes to live events and things like that, it's just not an option.
Have you ever had one?
No, not on set.
No, a live event?
Oh, yeah, a live event. It's been a while. I crashed in the wet in front of my wife when we just started dating way back in the day, like a good low side bounced off the ground and like oil, like, the whole deal. But...
It's all right. That's a good story.
Yeah, it's a good one. She remembers it vividly, of course. So, but yeah, so it's good. Dirt track's good for crashing, but on the street bike, I can keep pretty good handle on it. As far as what's going to happen. But when it comes to riding hard, it would be like in the parking lot with a couple buddies on a day where it's a brush up session. And then someone comes out, maybe a younger, fresher one, starting to press some of like the current, like 180 slide back and things like that. And then that's when I'll kind of level up, and the bike might come home and need a couple levers and some foot pegs and stuff.
Do you still, like, how often do you practice now?
So think about this. Now that I'm doing like at least 18 live events a year, if not 20 live events a year, that's 1 to 2 days on the bike a year. So I'm really only practicing to touch up every couple weeks. Now, practicing, I don't consider commuting, riding my dirt bike, going to a track day.
Specific.
All of that's practice for the craft as a whole. But practicing stunt riding right now is only once every couple weeks, but then from the time that it's March to the end of November, I'm on the bike 3 to 4 days a week.
So, like, what does that mean, though? Like, you just go to a parking lot, just do, a couple wheelies, a couple stoppies?
Yeah, so basically what I'll do is I'll run through the categories of things. So basically, like, when I do a live demo, it's different than a video project. Because, like, there's actually, this year is going to be a little bit of a training year where I'm going to spend a lot more time practicing, because I have a Q4 athlete project where I would like to level up a specific category of some of what I'm doing, because I haven't invested a ton of bandwidth into my stunt riding the last couple of years, and I just have a little itch right now. I want to cool. I want to get to a point, and I've got a really, really cool venue and team that we're going to work with. So I want to put some seat time in there, but the foundation is so laid that, like, it's an interesting thing. And this is why the movie set is the perfect place for me, because I used to have like a breathing ritual, and I taped my hands, and I, was geared up like an hour before, and I had to practice the day before, and this, that, and the other. And now it's like, unload the bike out of the van, put the gear on, start it, do the event. I've done it so many times that it's like the ritual already happened enough to where it's sharp and it's on, and I know that if I did a demo in 30 minutes, I can do it almost perfectly. And the only areas where I'd be lacking is like the amount of times my foot touches the ground that I would consider, like, in trials, a dab is not good.
Yeah.
So like that type of thing, but like, let's say, MotoGP, I might dab my foot a couple times on Friday, but like none on Sunday. Yeah. By the time you're kind of honed in.
And the only person that really cares is you, right?
Yeah. Or my community, but nobody else has any care if you're drifting and dab your foot or something like that. But internally, you're like,
are you changing, like, things up, like your routine? Or is it kind of the same?
So basically, my routine has, like, when I'm doing a live demo, so one thing depends on the venue. Like, when I'm on track at Austin, it's just flying. I want to do top of third, top of fourth long stoppies. I want to do second, third gear wheelie combinations. I want to do second, third, fourth gear drifting and burnouts. I don't really want to, with the exception of a couple times, do a technical circle set, because when you have a grandstand of thousands of people and you're this small, it's like you're not moving. So I want to be moving. But then when you get venue-wise, like my demo area, for example, this year is going to be 40 by 200 in the Ground Plaza. And basically within that area, I know that my motorcycle and my brakes can last with me on it about 12 minutes. Like, if I say I'm going to ride as hard as I can for a demo, at the end of 12 minutes,
they boil or something?
All brakes and the motorcycle will all be overheated in 12 minutes. Yeah. So I'll have basically almost to bar at the handbrake, the foot brake, the front brake, and the water temperature will be like 235, 240 in about 12 minutes in an area that big.
So you have that down to a science.
Yeah. Yeah. Cooler day, 14-minute demo. Austin, Texas, April 90-95, maybe a minute too shorter. But I have a couple blocks that's like the beginning, which is intro engagement. And then I have a freestyle portion that is kind of a gradient. And then I have a max output entertainment portion. And then I have a portion of the demo that involves the MC and involves the crowd, because I need to get the temperature back down to the bike. And then basically the last bit of time is the most technical, difficult things I can do, and then just smoking off a tire. Yeah. They love it.
That's so sick. Do you think that I don't know how to put this politely, but the OCD side of things that you have, like with the attention to detail and all this other stuff, to like, do guys who are doing other sets like that have that same attention to detail, or is that like
Only
a
a couple
thing that you're
or if one more. Yeah, no, for sure. Because the one thing that kind of happens is like, there's some stunt shows you go to where it's like, all right, a stunt show's at noon. It's going to be 25 minutes long. And it's just like a 25-minute just like session of just like some burnouts and some wheelies and some stuff. I want maximum captivated attention for the shortest duration of time possible with the maximum impact. Because the people that are there, especially in an event with high turnover, I want to be a highlight of their day, but I don't want to disrupt everything else they have going on. So like,
you only have their attention probably for so long.
Yeah, like
at
I could
some point
ride for 20 minutes.
But at some point, dude, the burnout, they're gonna be
seen it all.
Yeah, all right, cool.
No, that's crazy.
So, but basically,
nuts.
that time frame is a time frame that rarely, if ever, repeats. So, yeah, like a turnaround burnout or a 180 stoppie repeats, but the majority of the crescendo moments aren't repeating, and that's why I kind of have that time frame.
Do you have a tire? Does you do a tire per day or a tire per session?
So, tire per day.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, tire per day. So basically, like, Coda will be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, tire. Yeah. And then, like, only do I go through a tire a session if I'm put on some venue where you have that coarse kind of like shred your skin type of stuff. But besides that, it's pretty good. Or if you get stuck in a seal coat parking lot, you won't even go through one.
Oh, yeah.
Like, unless you literally do a standstill burnout. So you'll have a rare occasion, you'll have a tire that lasts. But, like...
You run warmers?
I do.
Do you?
I was gonna ask with the front end because you can't,
So,
you don't have time. You got to go out.
If it's 75 degrees or above, 70 degrees or above, no warmer. Actually, I take that back. Anything warmer than 60 degrees, I won't run any warmers at all. Anything colder than 60 degrees, I'll run a front warmer.
Just to do the...
Just to get it up to temperature, just to get it nice and heat soaked, because the more than pushing the front that I think about is when I'm coming out of a second gear drift and I'm looking at a barricade and there's some kids, a family sitting with an umbrella. When I grab that front brake, I need to be able to trail brake and slow that thing down. I can't have a push moment. So that's more of a safety precaution. But when I'm doing shoots, like when I'm doing like Corning Glass Museum or Minneapolis Skyway, we're doing tire warmers and lantern fuel and soda syrup on the grounds and all kinds of stuff, because like riding on like granite when it's cold and all this stuff, they just had to figure out ways to build traction when there is none.
Yeah, I think that was something I was going to go into, because that Skyway looked... That's
unrideable as far as conditions of,
it's
like,
crazy.
So,
and then you did it on the Alta, right?
Alta,
yeah,
e-bike.
Yeah, it's also something that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so traction on polished concrete. If anyone's ridden through a dealership or done anything, you know that it's just there's none. So,
and especially with a bike with no limiter.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like unlimited.
Well, this is what's crazy about. So, like, you guys know how I run the idle up, right? So turn the idle up. Motorcycle holds at a certain RPM. So I built with the Purdue University and a machinist here, helped design and build a throttle system for a fly-by-wire throttle that holds the throttle at a like quarter turn rotation, slightly open, so that I have an idle on the e-bike. An idle on an e-bike, let's say you're at infinity, let's just say you're at a drag strip, and you put the bike at 2% throttle, it will slowly but surely get to top speed. So if you put a normal bike, it'll just eventually find, but on the like the Alta, for example, if you put the throttle at a couple percent,
because it's just 2% above, it will
eventually hit top speed. It's very interesting.
Crazy.
So building the idle setup, you're like, whoa, it's weird. It has a pull, but it's climbing slowly, So all these things that I never experienced, because I came in so confident. I'm like, dude, gonna build the e-bike. It's gonna be sick, and Marchesini wheels and carbon tail and this, that, and the other. And the first day I rode it, I was like, I really told a whole group of people to permit this location for me in like a month. Wow, I don't know about this. This is gonna be interesting, because like the Alta, and I was explaining to you guys before, to do a wheelie on an e-bike, and I'll argue up one side and down the other with an engineer about the necessity and the use case of a clutch. But basically, what the clutch do is like it's the translator as far as like how you want to feed the power, because you don't always just want a linear feed. Sometimes you want to regress on feeding the power in. And to wheelie an e-bike slowly instantly. Like, perfect situation. I've been on set for like a music video or like a feature in a movie, and they're literally like, all right, your area is 26 feet wide by 113 long. That's your area to start, to wheelie, to hold pose, and to slow down and stop. So like getting an e-bike to wheelie at all is always like fast. It just doesn't have that. So I figured out before the project, if you just step on the rear brake.
You sure you should tell everybody? You're gonna see
this is like a tread lightly with caution.
This is gonna be an MX fails sort of deal, dude.
And it'll do the same on that Stark. I tell you what, same thing. But I step on the rear brake, and then I just take the throttle and I hold it wide open to the plastic, and the bike and the whole chain line and everything is like. And then I just let off the rear brake. And when I let off the rear brake, it comes up rapidly, and I just let off the throttle. So instead of letting on the throttle, I let off the throttle when it comes up, and then I catch speed.
But you can get that. Billy's going to throw that.
Yeah. Dude, but literally the bike is just making a noise like...
It's ready to kill you.
Yeah, like when you see the chassis pull a twist to the chain side from like all the chain bound tension that it has.
That's terrifying.
But figured it out.
I'm just going to say, do not try this at home. Disclaimer. This is a disclaimer for everybody.
By a professional. Close course.
We're going to put one of those Harley freaking subtitles in front.
Yeah. But it's funny, where there's a will, there's a way. That was just like a problem.
Were you nervous? Like, is that the only one you've been nervous for? Like, have you been... Not on set, right? Because that's a different kind of pressure, right? But like, have you been nervous doing one of these, Well,
I want to dive into that even more. You said something about like your routine, like how much of that played into the nerves of things? Like, was that something you had to actually deal with and like overcome, or was just like
is that anxiety? Like back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day, I would get a little nervous. And honestly, as funny as this sounds, that moment specifically that I had where I had to sit in the hot seat this entire time, I was in a really weird headspace because I was the lowest rung of the ladder, and I was super confident that I was going to like be in the top of it. And there was this guy from the East Coast that I remember. It was like, everyone here is here to see you. So whatever version of you provide, they're still here to see you. So it was just kind of this like, barrier break in there. Like, oh, like I know my best. I know my worst. They just know entertainment. They're like, he's like, be entertaining. Like if you're not having fun, they can see you're not having fun. And it was kind of a shift on like, what am I trying to do here? Am I just trying to do the most technical, robotic version of what can score well? Or am I trying to actually enjoy my time doing this? And that changed the way I looked at it a little bit, because there was periods in time from that point forward where I definitely had a bit of nerves, but like the nerves are just like skydiving right before you jump. You're like super, super nervous. Everything's all weird. And then as soon as you jump, there's like none, And I'm sure this is somewhat of a relatable feeling like on the grid, like putting your helmet on, putting your gloves on, heart rate's going up. You're trying to control breathing. You've done it a million times before, but you get up to the grid, heart rate's still climbing, still trying to manage it. Flag drops, and it's like, gone in the wind. Not a single thought about, clarity. You're locked in, you're in the zone, you're in the flow, and you're not thinking about everything that until that moment you were just all bound, And I'm sure you guys both have a way of like a breathing cycle or some type of mantra to at least get you back where you need to be. But it was something funny where there was just a certain level of time where I gained a certain amount of confidence and like, no, I put the work in to do this. I put the work in to do this. So even a bad showing for me is a great showing compared to like the world, So it was kind of one of those things. But, it's funny. I had this conversation with my wife a couple of days ago. Like, I've genuinely never been scared in my life until I had a child.
I was going to ask you that too. Like how did having a kid change that?
Never in my life. Like,
so you've never been nervous like doing one of these Red Bull shoots, like
nervous as in like, all right, got this, but not like, whoa, if something bad happens, it's going to drastically affect me.
No. Just like, can you do it? Like, could this, not can you do the wheelie, but can this?
Yeah. Well, I'll find out Q4 this year.
Okay.
For sure. Because it'll be the biggest boy moment I've ever had in my career as far as athletic feat. Because, remember when there was like Red Bull Experiment? It was like that level of thing. This is kind of like that level of big. And it's going to be something that like there's repercussions in a negative way if not done properly. But if I put together a team, which I think I have in place to do, it's going to be really, really cool. And it's going to be an accumulation of everything I've learned up until this point to then bring my athleticism back to the front of frame, because so much of it has been more of the building side and the storytelling side. But it's nice personally as an athlete to bring the athletic side back into it with something that's going to be testing. So there's going to be a time where it's going to, I'll kind of revisit those feelings.
Okay.
But, there's
like, so like when you jumped over Robbie Madison and that one thing, like none of that, that's all just easy. Like you never ever.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
I know. Yeah, okay. I have a judgment now that I didn't used to have, but I kind of know. And at this point, like there's been projects that I have told people and teams of people and teams that are in control of budgeting that I can do something that I haven't done before, but I know that I've done the preparation and I have the skill set and I do have the ability, but I just haven't put it together.
Yep.
And I think that's just come with seat time. It's like that's something where it's like you've done enough laps. You have a range of awareness of your ability, and that's kind of where things have.
So how long has it been that you've been stunt riding?
2005. So 2006 on a street bike.
So almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
Or 20 years this year.
20 years this year. Yeah. So I got on a Honda F4i. In 2006. In 2005, I was on a Honda 50 and TTR and stuff like that. 2006 was the Honda F4i. Yeah.
So between all of your different projects of stunt riding over all these years, what do you do to recharge your batteries?
Golf.
Yeah,
golf. Yeah, man. It has me in the worst way. It's funny. Golf is one of those ones where, I mean, honestly, 4 years ago, I thought it was silly. I thought it was literally for dorks, dude.
4 years ago, well, how old are you?
32.
Oh yeah, you're in the feet of every single young male that starts to hit 30s.
I was like, just dorks out there. I'm like, and I'd played golf like twice, and it was kind of like the drinking deal. Like, we're just going to the golf course to get drinks, and like obviously not smoking the ball, not having a great time. But Wings for Life, they had announced that they were transitioning their fundraising series to a charity golf tournament series. And in my mind, not knowing what golf was or tournament was, I thought it was going to be like, next up on the tee. I was like super worried. I was like, I want to participate. I want to support, but God, I just can't show up to something there's
can't raw dog that.
Yeah, there is that... when you're good enough at something to show up at something and totally not even be at a first base, like there's a certain level of humility, that you're going to experience. So I was like, man, I gotta at least go to the range. I gotta at least figure out how to get a golf ball, because at least if I can just get off the tee, then it won't matter. I can do whatever I want.
The first tee.
I was like, oh. So I my athlete manager now, who's been my athlete manager almost 15 years at Red Bull, Jeremy Malott, is an avid golfer and a stick. And he's, he literally sets up separate channels to have the Masters on at MotoGP Austin, like in hospitality. He's totally in. He loves golf, and he's like, I told him I was getting into it. I told him I went to the range once or twice, and he's like, how'd it go? And I was like, couple buckets, got a couple, mostly terrible. And he just was like, let's have a lunch range session. And he just kind of did the couple little don't look like a goon things, like hand on the head and this, that, and the other. And I had like 2 crisp shots, and I was just like,
hooked.
Wow. Yeah. And then it was like a couple times a week. It was pretty bad. But the thing is I have this like victimless crime golf habit. I do it ridiculously early or late at night and do range sessions at night, because I have a 7-year-old daughter and a wife. Between riding and the career, it's not just like, hey babe, I'm gonna go take all Sunday, go to the golf course. So like midsummer, I'll play 2 nines a week, and I'll do it at like in July, prime time, long day of the year. I can golf twice a week at like 5:30 a.m. and get 9 holes done and be home before 8 in the morning. And I do that kind of throughout the summer. In the winter right now, it's pretty cold, but the first crack of light is like 6:30, 6:40. So I'll do first tee at like 6:20, 6:30. And the first off, you can lap the course in like hour and 20 minutes. So yeah, so it's good. I do, but it's a 9-hole course, and I do it quickly. And then when the occasion's right, I get to play a nice course, and an 18 when I travel. And I think the one thing is, if I hadn't gotten into golf, I don't think I would still be interested in traveling cross country, because it just eventually gets monotonous, and you do the same things in hotels and venues and major metros, and it's so many places that I love. But now it's like, you know what? If I push hard to Vail, I can...
Okay, JP.
Yeah. If I push hard to Vail, I can sleep in the parking lot of XYZ golf course, wake up, use the clubhouse showers, get around in, and then get back on the road. And that motivates me to make sure I time the drive so I can at least get some enjoyment, some outside time.
I don't know if that's recharging the batteries, but that's our Yuasa battery recharge your batteries segment. Yuasa battery setting the standard for power sports batteries since 1979. Each and every day, it starts with Yuasa battery. Visit yuasabatteries.com to find the battery for your machine, or find your local Yuasa battery retailer. I don't know. I haven't gotten into golf.
Dude, recharging the batteries, as funny as it sounds, it does, but for a different reason than like the physical exertion of like doing it. It's the fact that it's one thing that I do, because if I'm doing a project outside, there's a million things going on. There's social, there's phone, there's like managing like calls and whatever else is coming in the door. When you're golfing, it's a complete commitment of time and bandwidth, and it's the first sport I've ever participated in my entire life that I wasn't almost immediately good at.
Really?
Yeah. And that was it for me. I was like, I couldn't just athleticize my way through it. I couldn't just like try harder, swing harder, be more athletic. I couldn't just rely on that. I was like, this is really frustrating. I was just, you understand why people get mad. You understand why you watch these meltdown videos. You're like, so that's what it was for me. But it got me like bad to the point where it's like, well, we got like 3-4 sets of golf clubs, and I'm like out here like bending wedges.
You're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be you, dude. You're just out here creating your custom lie.
Dude, I just like all the things. Like,
and
factory, dude. He's factory.
That's how you got
Factory is a mindset. Like, you don't have to ride for a factory team.
Make a
like
t-shirt,
factory
dude.
is a
That's
mindset.
a t-shirt right there.
Yeah.
Factory is a mindset.
Let's
quote it.
Dude, that's going on.
You ready for another one?
Yeah.
I can't take this one to myself because it's the Red Cloud Collective. They're a leather goods shop in Oregon, but their thing, and I have it in the shop a couple places. Any job, big or small, do it right or not at all.
Yeah, that's
it. Factory mindset. It's like, if you're going to do it great. If you're not, just don't even try.
I think that's going to be Aaron Colton, factory mindset. That's your tagline.
Yeah.
So you brought up your wife and kids. How long have you and your wife been together?
So next year is our 10-year wedding anniversary. Whoa. So we've been together for...
Why does it just blink?
Dude, it's crazy. Well, we both, from the time that we were racing super sport to now, a lot has happened. We've both moved a couple places, like
it's crazy.
Rides,
I was telling Corey, I was like, Colton's just always like, I didn't realize I don't know why, I just thought you were a Cali guy. Because you just been here so long.
Well, I came out here when I was 18. Yeah, came out here when I was 18.
And just different. How about California since you were 18 to now? How much has changed?
Crazy. A lot. And thankfully I landed in the Inland Empire for the first 2 years, so it wasn't straight to LA. That was probably like a good little holdover because it was just like gradually, because it's kind of a pressure cooker out here. Everything, you have to output a certain amount because the cost of living's high, traffic, pace of play on across the board is just kind of running at a speed that, like, I'm not here forever, but career base, my family loves it. It's great. It's great for what we have going on now. There is going to be a point, though, when Garage 93 is like not a 20 by 20. It's a compound. It's a whole compound setup, and that's probably not going to be in this general area, but that's kind of the next stage deal.
Yeah.
That's your goal.
Yeah, for sure.
How did meeting your wife or your girlfriend Ben, how did that change things for you? Like, did it help her?
It definitely helped. And the reason it helped was for a couple different reasons. So at the time that we had met, she was the marketing manager for the international motorcycle shows. She was working for Advanced Star, and she worked with both the international motorcycle shows and then Magic, which is a fashion and soft goods trade show in Las Vegas. And when we had met, it was in passing at more of a public time of dinner after kind of like load in for the event or whatnot. And she was introduced to me by the client who had brought me in as part of like a sponsorship to be riding demos in Continuum at a multiple of the stops. And when she was introduced to me, I stopped her and I was like, "Hey, like I know you." And she was like, "Shh, shh," like not here. It's like a group of people. It's kind of that professional setting type of deal. And we totally had spent some time together before, but I couldn't remember what it was for because especially at that time, it was like indie dealer show and there's a little bit of partying and you're going to meet different people. And then we connected the dots that like, hey, we have met before. And she was definitely not trying to continue points of contact with me. Like, yeah, because I think I tried to get her number or whatever the case was.
What, like at a bar or something?
At Indie Dealer Show, because that was also an event from the International Motorcycle Show.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
So it was like fun.
And you're 22, probably.
Well, at this time
10.
I was 20 or 19 or 20. And so it was basically now following, we were on that tour together and things accelerated over the passing weeks from that point.
Accelerate.
And
factory mindset.
And it was like factory mindset. And it was literally within that same year. She was traveling to every event around the entire world with me in the same year. So she had finished out that show cycle. And we had kind of come to a crossroads about like, hey, I'm going to be doing this project in Bolivia, in the Philippines, in all these different places. And she started coming on some trips with me. And she herself was already well-traveled, business professional, kind of understood that whole side of things. And then she's also bilingual. And so Central South America tours, it was just absolutely incredible having her. So with the expertise and background that she had, it programmed so well. So right out of the gate, we started doing like international. You get to know each other pretty well, like international tours together right away. Like getting food poisoning in a foreign country. Like you immediately are becoming a certain level of comfortability.
The relationship.
Yeah. So that's where things went from there. And then we got our first house together here in West LA. Was a couple of years after that, and things continuously fast forwarded, and now we have a 7-year-old daughter who's in 2nd grade. So it's crazy how that happens, but it's life normalizes quite a bit at home. Like when you really start setting foundation and running the schedule that it takes to go through the school system and things like that. So it's definitely interesting now where before we had Luna, we don't have to ask questions for anyone. We just, we're going to start touring at XYZ and it doesn't really matter to come home. Like we'd be home. I remember sometimes we'd be gone so long on tour, I'd like get back and see the gas bill be like less than $1. you're like, no way. Like you've been gone for so long. Basically the house just sat. And, but it was super cool because there was no reason to come home, and then creature comfort grows and things of that nature. But now it's a little bit more of a schedule with everything that has to be upheld with the family and things at home. But I'm super thankful because I still do get to take them to a couple events a year that you'd want to go to, like Formula One Mexico City, or like real fun, ones that the family can have a good time at. So that's been cool, but it definitely changes perspective and priorities. Like I definitely do love motorcycling in the motorcycle community. I've really fallen in love with golf recently, but it definitely like swaps priorities when it comes down to it, because I'm in an interesting situation where my passion and hobby is also my career. So it's been a really difficult growing thing for me to actually understand that sometimes I do have to just separate that and then put on the I'm checked out, I'm off the clock, I'm on the family clock now, because it's my whole life has not really been a career and a person. It's been the same thing, all one thing the entire time. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's hard for people to grasp that. I have that conversation with my girlfriend all the time because she's always like, it's not fair. Like, you get to say you're working, but you're just having fun doing what you want to do anyway. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's also like
I've built that.
Yeah, and it's also there's parts of it that I don't want to be doing, so it is still work. Yeah. But it's hard. It's exactly right. It is very difficult to get people to grasp that.
Yeah, and the 24-hour clock, it's just tough. Yeah. Like people, I mean, I would never change it. Yeah. But some days you're like, I wonder what a 9 to 5 would be like. Like going home and just like. Wherever you are in the job at the moment and going, deuces. Like,
Yeah.
I'll see you at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's calling.
No,
I'm done.
I mean, there's a certain like work-life balance and happiness is definitely something that I do appreciate when, I have friends who literally have a 9 to 5 or 5 o'clock. They do not think about work one single bit until the return. And I am almost to a fault, overly invested, to the
same.
point where it's like even the hobbyist little here's and there's, like what I call it is like the one thing my dad used to say to me, like me out here making lists, organizing things and setting up shop is working. Me organizing hardware is fiddle fucking around. Like, right. That's not like necessary for my job, but it does internally. Sometimes I might justify that it is, but I'm having to be better about like what is work and then what is fiddle fucking around. Like what is just spending time in the area that I love that really probably should be invested within family or other things of that nature. But it's been a relatively recent crossroads I've been at because it's like you're only experiencing things for the first time once they happen. So throughout all that, it's been pretty cool, like trying to have some separation, but in the end, it's all encompassing, So the biggest thing that I've been trying to do with all of the social media content and the way that I'm putting that together is setting it up in a way that isn't welcome to a day in my life every day. Like build a calendar, set up a content schedule, block off the time, and then also have my private life outside of what I'm presenting to everybody else.
That was going to be more of a question, like being kind of heavy on social media, having tons and tons of views. What is your view on social media and younger generation? And like, say your daughter, like what's the, with kids getting phones at 8.
4. Yeah, it's
Dude,
like crazy.
I don't even know that it's just crazy. Like, what's your view on that?
Yeah, so my daughter doesn't have a phone, but I mean, some of her friends do. And I started a TikTok on purpose. Like, I literally was like, I'm going to start doing the build series. I'm going to start a TikTok. It wasn't necessarily because I wanted to, but it's a necessary evil within, both conveying a marketing message, building intrinsic value with your brand, and then having that portfolio available. But what I'm trying to do is I look at my social channels as if I was to have a body of work that's publicly visible, I would like to be proud of that continuous body of work as a portfolio. If I was to have a body of work that's just me, first person, this is what I'm doing today, I'm not going to be super proud on this like portfolio of work that I've invested all this time into. So the way I've tried to structure it thus far, and not saying things will never change, but developing a style of content where I still get to have my privatized life and do the things I want to do, but still have something presentable to the public where I can engage with them and then show and share an internal part of my life. But there is a little bit of separation there because I go on enough influencer related events where I do see people where there is no separation. Like it is a all encompassing 24/7, 365 plugged into their audience base, which power to them for having that devout community and figuring out a way to monetize that. But that's not what I'm interested in doing because I already came into this as an athlete who's transitioned. It wasn't like my goal to become like a daily uploader. So I'm trying to uphold that still to a certain degree.
So you wouldn't take your skills and like, if you're, I guess do you know what I'm trying to say?
No.
Like, for instance, you wouldn't take your skills and try to like create a page for your daughter eventually. Like,
no,
it would be
if that happens, it would be because she tells me she wants to do it,
okay.
and my wife and I have thought about that, and we've thought about the privacy. Like, you guys know I'm married, but I don't know if everybody does. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's like, the relationship I have with my wife and daughter is a private relationship that I might sprinkle here and there on a story. But when it comes down to it, like, we know we're a unit. So I don't need to tell the world that we're a unit. And that's something that we kind of do cherish, our privacy. Now, I'm going to detour from the course a little bit because I am going to do a project with my daughter this year, which is going to be our first ever made for YouTube kids project, which is a different uploading and different like next playable viewing in the way that works. So we found a 16-inch, we found a kid's 20-inch specialized Rip Rock BMX bicycle, like trash side next to like furniture and a move out. and it's perfectly thrashed. It's like pink and it's rusty and there's no vinyl on the seat. And like we had this back and forth conversation when I picked it up, and she wants to do a build. So we're going to experiment like that, and it's going to be on my channel and page. But like, I don't necessarily want her to crave that as far as like that instant justification that it's being created by so many of these different platforms. So, I'd rather lead with knowledge on her than just try to discipline the desire for it. So we'll see. But she lives a pretty rounded life so far, and we've been able to abstain to a certain degree, of being plugged in. But I'm sure there's going to be more and more roads that we're going to have to cross, especially as things come into 9, 10, 11.
We find my sister's 11. She's like, TikTok on my mom's phone every second she gets. She's like, guys, it was really the other day. I'm like, are you wearing makeup?
Yeah.
And she's like, what? It's not makeup. I'm like, I can see your skin. Like, it's not shiny. There's something on it.
Yeah.
She's like, it's just blush. It's just like, are you kidding me? And then I'm like, looking closer. I'm like, are you wearing blue eyeliner?
Maybe.
She's 11 years old. I'm like, dude,
relax.
yeah.
No, that's the answer to it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just always wondered because it's
crazy.
That's like my biggest fear
Wild West.
of like if I ever had a kid is like, I know how you see the zombies.
Yeah.
And you just don't know who can
I do have these little light internal battles sometimes for like, so now that I'm getting more and more into the metrics of like how my stuff's performing. So like when I go on a video and I'm like, whoa, this video has been watched 11 years, 300 days, whatever, 100 hours and 12 seconds. You're like, whoa. You're like, that's crazy. Like the math is the math. Like the app, what it does is it just adds up every second that somebody watched the video. And you're like, whoa, that was someone's time that has been absorbed by what I've created. And I do have little internal thoughts about that for sure.
Yeah.
So at least make it good.
Yeah.
At least make it good.
It's crazy.
Because the goal, and I don't know how much of this goal gets transcribed now that it's in the shorter form. So that's why the new adding these 15-minute weekly interval YouTubes, I think, is going to help. The entire goal with all of this with the series was not just to build really cool motorcycles for myself. I don't want to become like Bob Vila, where it's like, this is how we do trim. But I would like to inspire everyone watching to do something. Like just to do, like, if it could be build a motorcycle, but like all the time, like I get DMs that's like, look at my foyer where I put my shoes. You know what I mean? Like I had
DIY.
DIY. Like
Dude,
I got these group of guys in Greece who, after I did the project in Mykonos, they would send me photos of just like, neatly organized things. They would just like send me photos of neatly organized things, being like, we kept it going. We kept it going. Or I went to I set up this workshop in India for me to do a project over there, and I got there, and great, this place was great. These guys were super, super kind, and they set up a great home for me to build in. But I was like, hey guys, first thing we're doing, we're going to empty this thing out. We're going to sweep it up. We're going to build some tables. We're going to set up a zone. And I'm sure, two guys are like, yeah. And the other two guys are like, this fucking guy.
Have you seen this guy's builds?
And then at the end of it, like, sure enough, they were like, and it was kind of like one of those things. And I'm not telling everyone go over the top and be OCD, but I love inspiring people to do projects. And now that I have so many of these builds in the wild, when I go out, I hear like, I'll be at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, and it will be like some mom and some kid being like, hey, look at my XR100. I saw the CR125 video, and that's why I rebuilt my XR100. Like I had people when I did the R1 project in the Silver Lake Sand Dunes in Michigan, somebody Snapchatted that I was there. The next day, there was 2 vans from Ohio that drove out with dirt bikes, and it was a gang of kids that they saw that my van was in the dunes, and all of a sudden they're riding up to me on random dirt bikes in the dunes. And sure enough, by the end of the day, like half of them are like, yeah, no, we watched the series, we built our bikes, and one of which built like this super badass homegrown water-cooled Honda 150 Supermoto, and he brought it all the way to Michigan to show me in the hotel parking lot, because I was in a small town in a small area for the dunes. And it was just kind of cool. So seeing these stories, like I just want to inspire people to just do something with care and attention. And like most people have so much more ability than they have exerted because they haven't exerted it. So like,
and they don't know.
They don't know. Like someone else, how do you know how to rebuild a whatever engine? Like I don't, and I didn't before I started this project. Like I got myself in too deep. I researched. I addressed the skill set I had. I found the areas I didn't. I called around. I asked some questions, made some notes, and it worked. And that's just kind of one of those things I'm trying to pay forward. It's like so many, and it's not just mechanical ability. There's like, you can apply that to like almost any facet of just overexerting yourself, having confidence that you can do it, and then just being confident to complete the task.
Yeah, I think that last part is super key. I find myself in hurdles all the time that I'm like, I can't do that. I'll just pay somebody to do it, right? Like this, it's clear. Whereas my girlfriend's full opposite. She'll be ripping down the wall. DIY. We can plumb the house. I'm like,
we can do
I'm
it
like,
for less.
what, dude? Like what,
Dude? It's
She's like, I'll YouTube. I'm like, what?
It's so funny now, and this is where age starts coming in. So Adam Waheed and we talk on the phone all the time because he'll be like, dude, so I just bought this router. I watched Project Farm, and the Bosch router was for sure the best one, and this, that, and the other. And then I'll call him, and I'd be like, hey, you were just doing some tile, right? Did you end up getting like a masonry saw? Like, what did you do for your... And like, dude, now we're all like, you know, like it's like, hey, you know, setup notes. We're trading notes on like home DIY stuff, which is like... It's funny, I'm doing the same stuff I do out here inside. It's just my own pet project. So maybe someday I can include some other, like when I build the compound, like a shop build out would be cool because it'll be like the exercise of OCD from the top, you know. But
dude, Waheed's though, his building his bathroom or whatever, and the tile. Oh, dude, that was like
he should really have a channel though.
That
just 'cause it'd be
series,
so funny, dude.
that series was. So, you know...
He's redoing it.
What?
Yeah, he didn't like
it.
Well, the guy didn't do a good enough job, and he basically plugged the overflow on the drain, so it was pooling in one area, and he bought the Makita hammer drill, and he blasted it all out. He's literally, as we speak, he's doing it.
He needs to chill, man. Yeah. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live.
Like, right?
The world needs to protect people like Adam.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. He's the man.
100%. He's
one of my best friends. But yeah, it's funny. We always are just like... We'll answer the phone. I'm like, I can do anything, man. I can do fucking anything. It's the mindset of it. Because a lot of times you can't, but then you're stuck in the position.
You got to
do it.
Yeah. You just got to start.
Got to start. Yeah.
How do you feel like you deal with like for me, like when I start doing something, like my brain just starts like when you saying you're doing all this research and so on and so forth. Like, how do you like stop yourself? How do you shut off?
Tough.
I guess
I really struggle with shutting off. Like I struggle with shutting off. I struggle with sleep cycles shutting off, like situations
too,
like
how much do you sleep if you're getting up at 5:30 for golf? So
well, I don't really make it much past 9 to be honest. And I run an earlier clock, but the thing is my daughter's going to bed around 8:30. You know what I mean? So like, by that time, if chances are if I try to put her down, I probably passed out. If not made it a little extra time. I don't stay up all that late, but most of the time, like I can't remember the last day I was up after 6:30. Like it's been a long time. So I try to make the most out of the daylight hours of the day, but I definitely could benefit from turning it off a little bit, which is just kind of one of those things like harnessing the power you have. Like understanding I have OCD is one thing. It's another thing to like put it into an avenue for it to succeed. And there's other areas that I have interpersonally that maybe it doesn't succeed with, but shutting it down is definitely tough because I've created a career on being a yes man and moving forward and on to the next one and brainstorming and new ideas and new inventions and this, that, and the other. So it's definitely an interpersonal struggle, but I value sleep a ton because I spend so much time working with the trainers on my S&C program that like, as silly as this sounds, if you want to maximize your testosterone and your HGH level, you need to maximize your sleep. Like, right? So if you are trying to gain and build a stronger constitution, but you're doing it without sleep, you're lacking the ingredients you need to make this time you're spending here worthwhile. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, maybe even though I want to watch whatever series or want to watch whatever movie, it's just bedtime is bedtime, So it's one of those things that probably comes with age.
Do you ever get overwhelmed, like with?
Oh yeah,
like internally.
Yeah. Sometimes like drop off Luna at school, have my quick morning download with D, and I walk outside, and it's like the list hasn't gotten shorter in 10 years. The to-do list is like just only gotten longer. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start today.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have so much to do that I don't even know what I could possibly do to help me eliminate things besides staffing, which is ever evolving and which I've been doing more and more of, building a more robust team, learning to be more comfortable with delegation. And then upon delegation, having a level of attention to detail that you require, but not sweating the small stuff, because this is one of the most important things that someone told me on set. They're not you. So it's not going to make sense the same to them. So you can't expect them to have the same work quality, the same output. You can have a acceptable range that you can explain to them, but you got to understand they're not you. Yeah. So that's one thing I do struggle with a little bit. I definitely get a little spun out sometimes in, like, you know, van, house, family, project 2 years from now, project 4 hours from now, call now, like this, that, and the other, like amongst anything else, like bills, personal health, eating, etc. But I just trying to do, like, you know, 1% better, 1% better on that. And I think one of the biggest things that I did with that was just a fixed schedule of strength and conditioning that I started doing in 2020. So it's at least like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8:30 to 11. That is unless I'm literally bedridden or not home, that's a non-negotiable. That's just doing it. Yeah. And it's just, building some things like that so that I have structure.
And that's at Red Bull.
Red Bull. Yeah. The APC is the training facility just a couple blocks from here.
Yeah. No, that's stuff we were talking about on the way over, because I've told you before, just like on Instagram DMZ or stuff, like I have similar mindset and issues as you. Mm-hmm. So it's like I can relate. And also like with the overwhelming side of it though, where it's like, when we're getting ready to drop a podcast, we are fortunate enough to actually have help now, which took a while to get to the point where we're like, can we bring in help? But it's like, getting burnt out with
scary, because you're relinquishing responsibility and you have attention to detail.
The other thing is that and it's me and Corey have very different skill sets. And unfortunately, the beginning of this podcast was heavily in Corey's side. Yeah. Right? Design work. He's a lot better at writing, a lot better at press releases, a lot better. Like, that's not my forte, right? I'm good personality. I'm like, let's run through a wall. Yeah. I'll fucking drag you through, dude. Yeah. Like, we're going to do it no matter what kind of deal. But, so it was very heavy on that. So it was.
But I get overwhelmed. Like, right now I'm balancing my clothing company,
You got a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of different stuff. But the biggest thing I think is, like you were saying, even like with my girlfriend, it's like letting her do the dishes, it's like, okay, I'll go back in and it's like,
you can loosen the leash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's certain things where, as he said it to me today, he's like, I think your OCD has gotten worse.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I think one thing too with OCD as a whole, which like I think embracing it and empowering it is important, but I think like one of the most crucial and fundamental things with it is just understanding that there are certain things that like in this place, they have to be here. That's what I require of here. But there's certain things like don't sweat the small stuff because you'll go insane. You know what I mean?
I know, it's so hard.
You'll go insane. And I do, and I struggle with it because it's like, like if we repaint 3 bedrooms or we repaint 3 rooms but leave one because it's looking pretty good. But then the next day you're like, should have painted that room. And then it sits with you and it's just taking a certain amount of mental discipline to be like, it's fine. Yeah. It'll be there tomorrow. I can make the decision later. It's okay. It can slide.
Do you ever get this thing where you feel like you it's almost better to not start if you can't do it the way you want?
Yeah, like the paralysis.
Yes.
Yeah, paralysis.
Like if I can't do it exactly to the level I want to, just not bother.
Yeah, that's the do it right, big or small. Yeah. It's the thing that I find with that helps when I do get in that point of paralysis where I am almost in the point where it's like, and it's actually a bad trait, but it's like, all right, I have this laundry list that's a million things long, and probably there's a key priorities that those should get done in. But I'm so overwhelmed. Let me just go do the side project so that I don't have to be in that world. And something I've had another friend that struggles a similar kind of situation of this. And it's like the most important thing when your room is a mess or your car is a mess or your garage is a mess is you look at it as an entirety of a mess. Okay. But the way that you should look at it is if I pick up this can and take it to the recycling bin, that is one part of the mess that you've made progress on. And then if there is a washer on the floor and I pick up that washer and put it where it belongs, that is one step closer. And if you continue to just do these small inconsequential movements, you're then going to have a completely fresh, redone, renovated, completed task. But if you don't start, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, dude, I'm not that person. I'm so.
Well, I've done this thing. I started doing this thing where I like before I go to bed, I'll write down my to-do list for the next day, and then then I don't think about anything except for just crossing something off.
Yeah.
You know, if I can just start by crossing something off, then it'll start it off. But if I don't do that and I just like have the list in my head, I just get like paralyzed.
You know,
it's crazy. My girlfriend's like that. Yeah. Like Nikki is super like if she's had this bless her this scarf that she took up knitting, right? It's like the golf of the dudes. Like every female's taking up knitting or fucking sourdough right now. And she's been knitting this thing, and it's like, dude, it's from here to your fucking garage, dude. And she's like, I finally finished it, and I'm like, sweet, how big is it? She's like, rolls it out. I'm like, what the fuck are you trying to do with it? She goes, but I just had to finish it because I had yarn left or whatever it is. But she does it all the time, and it's hard though to sympathize when I don't have that. Like I don't even remotely have that trait. I have other awkwardly stupid traits, ADD, I can't focus, like whatever. But that trait, it's so hard for me because she has it, you have it.
So question, so you guys road trip together ever?
Oh yeah.
How's that? Because I
we respect it.
Okay, yeah.
3 hours in, you'd think you'd been driving for 48. You know,
because it's just one of those things that's like people are like, why do you travel alone so much? You know, like why do you fly in your guy like MC? I'm like, well, you know, sometimes I just like cruising along. You know, there's just certain things. But no, there's like strengths and weaknesses of both sides. Because sometimes, man, it would be nice just to say, just F it and roll. Yeah. But build different. You know,
yeah, but we've been together for so long. Like we
talk about me and you, or Nikki?
No, me and you. We've been
all of us.
No. I mean, dude, I don't think it's ever really been that bad.
No, I mean, like internally, you know,
you understand each other.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I think though, you know, like it's the same thing like he's talking about with Nikki, like with Kaylin, my girlfriend. She's got this candle thing that she's been wanting to do, and it's been like a thing for like, I don't know, like 4 years now.
We started it back in. Yeah. We were going live.
Yeah. You pouring?
Well, she's doing it, and she's so like, you know, like
a sick logo.
You and I, it's like you start a project. It's like if you don't finish that project within like a week, it's like, you know, it's like bothers you to death. Yeah. This has been like ongoing for 4 years, and like every 6 months she'll kind of like pick it back up a little bit, and so I've got like a full closet in our downstairs just full of candle shit that's like halfway to something. And I'm like, it drives me nuts like every day, and I'm just like, but I've had to learn like we're just not the same. Yeah.
And that's what I definitely do thrive with a deadline. That doesn't mean I don't procrastinate, but I do thrive with a deadline.
Oh, I do too. Mm-hmm. I like the pressure. Yeah. I live in the pressure. But it doesn't. It's interesting when I go to sleep with my girlfriend at night, and I'm just like, see ya. And she's like, you know what I mean? And you can just feel it. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this dude? Shut off. Like, dude, like flick the switch, write it down, do it. Like, you just can't comprehend it. Like, I just can't comprehend. Like,
do you find it hard with the social media just because like you've got how many different platforms are you on? TikTok,
I find it tough. And like, I don't know if you guys have noticed or not, but I posted one time in the last 35 days or so. And that's just because I was like, you know what? I can drop down the algorithm a little bit if I stop posting. And that's going to be, if you're to look at business and to say your chart should be on a continuous increase up, that's not the best decision. But the health of my vigor by just regrouping for a month and getting all my projects in line and not participating, I think has a better outcome than just me being consistent. Because from July to the end of the year, I posted every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That was a lot. That was a lot to the point where I was like, October, I was loving it. Everything's millions of views. I'm all excited. I'm replying to everyone. And then come November, I'm like trying to reply to everyone. And then come December, I'm like, I just want to spend time with my family. Yeah. So I needed a little time. And it's going to be a great spring and great homecoming. But I've started to be like, The content that I'm making, I'm going to make it as good as I possibly can. And I don't really care about the performance, because if the content is good, the performance will eventually come. I'm not like just focused just on the numbers, because I'm not chasing social media like that. I'm creating this portfolio of work that I'm going to be proud of the entire way through. And if I'm proud of it, I'm happy that I'm invested the time in it. And hopefully the others will appreciate what I put into it.
Do you think that's come with age at all?
100%.
Because I feel like I went through that a little bit this year, and a couple dips where, I mean, I took 3 weeks off, and I didn't post a single thing.
Yeah.
And lately, I've been more like, I'm not posting to post.
Yeah.
Like if I post something, I want it to be good content.
Yeah.
I want it to go out. I want it to be passion.
Yeah.
I want to have some. I want to.
It's truthful to yourself that you were interested in the act you were participating in.
And I am, like at some level, not hiding likes. Like if it flops, it fucking flops.
Yeah.
Like kind of deal.
That's
like
fine.
I try to do, the best. But I think we also were talking yesterday about just even with the podcast, right? Like we've got a schedule. Like we want to continue pushing things out, but like we can't get bent if we can't do one, because we can't do one.
Yeah.
Right?
Because then if you just grasp at straws to get one done, you're probably not happy with the work quality you put into it.
I think the hard part too is, and you may or may not, depends how you do your deals with like companies and whatnot, but like we're starting to put ourselves in a spot where we have to put stuff out, which is like a weird thing to
I'm totally in that. I'm totally in a lot of these deals I have minimum contractual obligations on content spread, on like, the amount of times that they're included and whatnot. But the thing that I'm thankful of is it's become more granular recently, because some of the costs associated with and maybe the non-endemic partners, I have a little bit more of a one-track line of success. But what's been so fantastic, some of the longer-term partners that I have an open enough communication with them where I don't mind if we have X amount of required posts in a year, and let's say for that brand I miss 2 or 3 months in a row. I have a good enough relationship where I will speak with the brand and say, hey, this is what happened. This is the regrouping period. We're still going to hit our overall post count for this year, but this is why. And if you have an issue with this, I can invest bandwidth into making sure that we hit those objectives, or I can do this with full passion in my portfolio. You'll still get the post count within the year, but this is why it wasn't January, February, March. Might be tough to come out with some content piece original collaborating with a partner of yours, because you would just have to come up with something. So I think that's one thing that's come now that I have a little bit more confidence in like who I am, what my program is, that like, hey, we made this deal. Let me take your temperature on this. How do you feel if this is the case? Oh, you have an issue? No problem. I'll get it done. But usually if you tell them the plan, they're like, okay, sounds great. Yeah. Cool. I'm glad. Thank you for being transparent. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough. What do you think the biggest difference is, where you're at now and like raising a family in this world with what you're doing every day versus like when you were growing up back in Minnesota? Like how stark are the differences?
Crazy.
Santa Monica to Shakopee, Minnesota. It's way different. The kids are older here. Like just if that makes sense, like the
girl
5 to 10.
Yeah, per age, it's just different. And I don't know if that's because there's so many high-earning, high-achieving individuals in a dense situation here, or if that's my changed perspective on life, and that's all kids in general now with technology, plus internet learning, plus AI capability, plus there's all these things that have been highly accelerated through the whole process. But it's definitely different. Right now it's like -5 where I'm from, and we're going to ride bicycles to school tomorrow morning. Right. Like it's different, so... The one thing I'm definitely trying to do is, I don't want things to become too sheltered and too bubble in Los Angeles. Like we still take our trips in the van, we still travel plenty, we still go up to where we're from and things of that nature. But it would have been cool to grow up here. I think about that, like Luna's birth certificate says Santa Monica. Like it's cool. It's an achievement in a way. It's kind of cool that we've been able to sustain a life path that's been allowing us to do it. So super, super thankful of that. But the one thing I will say is she's taking a pretty big liking to performing arts and theater and things of that nature, which happened organically, but I'm thankful we're here because that is something that now we can invest into. Like, oh, this is what you like? We are in an excellent place for that. And if it wasn't that, I think no matter what sport it is, the talent pool out here for road racing, tennis, motocross, golf, like all of it, if you really wanted to get into it and you can figure out how to sustain financially out here, because that's like the number one deal for everyone, is if you can figure out how to sustain financially in Southern California. There's a ton of opportunity here. Politically, it's just screwed, but I mean, as far as a place to be, it's like nice, super nice. Yeah.
I didn't know we were going to go in that.
Yeah, well, that's what we can just leave it at that. We all know. We all know.
Now, I mean, obviously, the whole stunt world is much different than it was, back when you were really competing and things like that. Where is it at and where is it going?
So the thing about the stunt world that's so interesting is I went through peaks and valleys, not only of like the optics of like the community, but also like I went through he's too young, he didn't earn it, to okay, he didn't go anywhere, he's pretty good, and he's not going away, he's pretty damn good. Like, and then I had the respect of everyone, both the fans, the community, the people I was going against. That it's funny when you have, some guys were friendly in the beginning, but some guys were like, this kid out of here, get this kid out of here. And then to reach a point where it's like, oh, now I'm going to go road racing. I'm going to do those projects. I have a bigger vision. I'm going to do these international demo tours. Oh, he forgot about us.
Did you get to sell out?
He's sold out. He's doing it. Oh, Givenchy campaign. Like, in my eyes, I'm like, yeah. Like, what do you mean? Like, what is your goal? And then it finally got to a point where it's like, all right, he's kind of killing it. Like, and I say that because I still value the community of people that I got into this with. But in the end, I'm happy with what I've done with myself. I'm happy with the life that I've built, the family that I have. So it's been interesting with stunt riding because the community has looked at me in many different lenses. But I think at this point, the lens they look at it in is they see it. And it's only positive but praise. Because even if I'm not the best stunt rider in the world right now, the optics that I give to stunt riding is so much bigger than, almost anyone in the field. And the community itself is not at the competition. I take that back. The level of riding is significantly higher than it used to be, but the level of available competition is nowhere like it used to be. So if you had that skill set to exercise that specifically in a competition venue is not as available as it used to be. But I don't know what Instagram is going to get you if that's all you have, but the internet really shows off the skill set, and you can kind of see who's the guy, like the guy. Like there's a guy, Benjamin Baldini. I'd say right now he's like untouchably good. He's just fluid. He understands the control of a motorcycle forward and backwards, and he's aggressive and fast. But I don't think he's like massively competing. When he is, he's doing fantastic, but availability of competition isn't much. So it's really become a participation and content kind of related community. There are competitions around, but that peak of what was there for that period of time, that era, like the good old days, I don't think is going to come back within my sport.
So there is competition still, like that, the world is there?
The world is there, but not like it was. Like, so let me rephrase that. There's a couple competitions in the U.S. that I would say are sport bikes that are somewhat novelty. With all due respect, it's not what it used to be. It's not the same grid. A lot of the OG guys got different paths of life that naturally happen. Some of which still have a program, like Chris McNeil still has a program with BMW, and there's still guys that have certain things going on. But internationally, I know there's still some competition stuff that seems to happen in Poland and in France, and I see videos and such from afar. I've competed in Hungary and Switzerland and stuff before, but it was many, many years ago. And it's definitely different. The riding quality is incredible. There's some like the guys who are still pushing the sport, and I watch these videos sometimes, and what I try to do is, first of all, I respect it. Second of all, I try to estimate the amount of effort and seat time it would take to get there. Like all right, like if I go back to old school, like 5-6 days, 5-6 days a week, 4 to 6 hours a day, I can't do that anymore. I need to make a living as funny as it sounds, making a living isn't just seat time on the motorcycle like it was at a different stage in life.
Is there a trick that they do now that you can't do?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, really?
For
okay,
sure.
so it's moved on.
It's moved on. And part of that would be like, okay, I'd have to...
Do you know what that is? Like, for instance, like off the top of your head?
God,
I don't even know a trick.
oh man, I'm trying to think of
sound-
how I can even say it in simple terms. But there's stuff now. Like there's this guy, this Benjamin Baldini guy. By the way, there's more guys than that can do this. There's some guys and there's some incredible talent in Brazil right now too. But like they're getting to the point where they can do a flat spin 360 and then 180 bunny hop the bike in like a straight line, if that even makes sense. Like it's almost like you put Dawn dish soap on the floor and just it's like just 180 and you're just like, wow. But the amount of attempts that you need to do and the amount of bike damage you need to do to do that is quantifiable, but it's tons and tons and tons of time. And I right now, if I wanted to get back to the pinnacle of difficulty level in stunt riding, would have to rebuild my bikes with all of the cages, all of the sub cages, all of the protection, and then go back to practicing, at least multiple hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. Now, there's tons of meat on the bone for me to start grinding a couple sessions a week, which I have a plan, and that's going to be like dedicated practice time, and I have a goal in mind. But if I wanted to get back to like the top of the competition scale, it'd be an incredible amount of seat time that the young 20-year-old guys are like fully vested in right now. I'm kind of in a little bit different life stage, and it hasn't really been my goal to be the number one stunt rider in the world in a while.
And then I would say the last thing is have you seen so since I've been in the Harley world, right, seeing the Harley stunt world kind of like make this massive resurgence. And it kind of remembers
some of those guys are killing it.
Dude, like Seabear and these, drifting and kind of bringing back that early days, kind of running from the cops, like that sort of vibe. Just, a shitload of people and just doing big burnouts at bars, doing wheelies on fucking baggers. Like that stuff is nuts.
It's captivating.
It's crazy.
It's captivating.
But
and Seabear's a good buddy of mine, and there's different guys in the field. I mean, some of his videos, we'll go back and forth on metrics, but like 20, 50 million. You know what I mean? Like just unfathomable. But
do you think if that time, like, okay, this is stupid, but hypothetical. Do you think the world of Harley Davidson, right? Because they've been able to kind of really get into different facets again, right? The racing has really exploded, road racing again, right? This sort of drift thing is kind of exploded because it's such a mass in America. Do you think if that time frame was during the peak of stunt, like things could have been different?
I think it could have crossed over, but in that same time frame, the custom bike build and the rally scene for V-Twin was just nuts. Even 10x bigger than, we were piggybacking on those, and those were 10x what this huge scene was. And I don't know, but it's definitely different in its own thing. And like, I got a ton of respect for some of those guys, and we go back and forth, and we're totally a different cut cloth. But obviously respect the skill set and love commenting on all the videos, like ripping through time. Like, I think it's cool. I don't do it, but I do think it's cool. So
how do you rate somebody like Top Rack with his stuff he does?
Do you know his story?
I know his dad's a ex world champion stunt guy, or what they consider a world champion.
I think so. Like, so his dad was a stunt rider. His dad was fundamentally what I do, and that is a story I think about very much. You'd asked me that question earlier about like, hey, if you actually had the potential and you had the opportunity around it, him riding the way you see him riding is what someone who knows how to stunt ride, who then reaches the maximum potential of road racing looks like. You can see it because something I was doing, like when I was learning how to trail brake, I was learning how to trail brake on my knee, and the rear wheel was coming off the ground all the time on like 600 American sport bikes with shit Dunlop spec tires on them. And that was how it was felt to me. But to other people or someone in the pack, they're like, what was that? And you're like, coming in hot. And you're watching him do it at 1.5 million miles an hour, passing people confidently, like really trailing the brake hard and being comfortable with the motorcycle. I love watching him ride because I didn't know that backstory. And as soon as I saw him ride, I was like, man, he looks like a stunt rider. And then I saw the stuff down pit road, and I was like, that is like way, because I've been in it enough just road racing and messing around doesn't teach you how to roll long stoppies. Like, you got to go in a parking lot and you actually got to like put in time. He put in that time. I don't know when, I don't know how old he was, but you can tell. And
But he does it all the time.
All the time.
Like all of
He do
his
circle
stories.
wheelies and all that shit.
Yeah,
He does like the scooter videos. where he
yeah,
just
like
Did you see on the BMW 1000R? I mean, like that's like
he's good.
that first
He's a good
gear will
rider.
go. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
he's super talented.
Yeah.
But
have you
like,
got to do anything with him?
No, I would love to. He's super cool.
I know, Red
met
Bull, too.
I met the guy from Red Bull that signed him, which was cool. Because I was like, he was the one who told me the story about the stunt rider deal, and I was like, it makes sense. That's what I thought the whole time. You know, that's I knew it.
yeah.
And but it's cool because he's fun to watch. Dude, World Superbike is definitely the best racing to watch. Like actual
I would say BSB is a little bit above it, but World Superbike I would say is
I would
it's
say
the best I've
Find
seen
the
in the
BSB,
years.
That's all.
The actual pass interchange amount of BSB is the best.
It's crazy.
It's just the visibility to watch it
course.
consistently is more difficult.
Yep.
But dude, the finale BSB race
Dude.
last.
Yeah.
Oh
Dude.
my god!
The
That
last
should've
And
been
you
on
were,
ESPN
you
or
were over
I
there
know.
for a couple of years, dude.
Oh
It's
my
crazy.
God. It's
been on
the
ESPN.
fan base over there is one loyal, and they're unreal.
Yeah.
The electricity that comes out of BSB is something that I've never seen. Besides, like going to Italy MotoGP or Spanish MotoGP or something of that caliber. Like the Brits have it.
Yeah.
They understand it.
Yeah.
And they show the fuck up, rain
Yeah.
or shine.
Yeah, rain is just whatever.
It's
Rain
just-
to a Brit, it's just
That's it.
yeah. They don't
What
even
do you-
believe in
they
rain
just-
jacket.
Dude, they go,
yeah.
what are you made of, sugar?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you?
Dude, it's
so good.
crazy. I would love to see you do a collab with Top Rack.
I would too.
That would be sick.
Who's
Plant
your-
the seed.
Who's your favorite collab you've ever done?
I gotta say, because respect for the craft, Danny McCaskill.
Oh yeah.
Because that
He's
was
a-
one where I watched him on the internet for years. This is why, because he himself, super nice guy, and Magira was like, hey, we have an idea. He's coming to the United States to do demos for us at Sea Otter. Can you come to Sea Otter? And we've told him that you would like to come, and he's interested in you guys doing a video piece together. And I was like, I would more than anything love to do that. So I go up to Sea Otter, Laguna Seca, and I'm curious at what he wants to do. So
you have no idea.
I have no idea besides the fact that Magira is the catalyst who's bringing us both to Sea Otter, and we get X hours of track time on a certain day to shoot together. And when I get up there, I meet him, and immediately he talks about the corkscrew, and he says, I have an idea for the corkscrew. And I was like, okay, let's hear it. And he's like, I'm going to go up, and I'm going to skid and pick up the rear wheel, and I'm going to do a stoppie at the top of the corkscrew, and then I'm going to roll down it backwards. Like, not forwards, like backwards. And he did it the first try. So, literally, he's like, this is what I do. And he's like, I was watching you warm up. Could you drift around me the whole time we go down the corkscrew, and could you keep going lower? And I was like, yeah, no problem. Dude, he did it in a wonder. He did it first try. He literally went up, shuffle 180'd, picked up the stoppie, and then rolled down the corkscrew backwards in a stoppie, the whole thing.
And you just had to burn out around him.
Drift around him.
That's got to be
terrifying.
kind of tough
That's
though
terrifying.
too to drift.
Well,
like,
yeah,
on,
because
uneven.
you're slowing down on the way up, and then the pendulum, it kind of looks like a
Egg.
spirograph, but it was pretty easy for me in comparison to him. I mean, I would think, unless that was like a walk in the park for him. But when when the job was told to me, I was like, oh yeah, no problem, got you. And but that was cool collab. But that one, because just just watching that happen, be like, he's that good. And then the other one, I'd say that was my most favorite, just because the amount of fun we had, and just same thing, game, respect, game. Robbie Madison and Mykonos. That's one because every single hit in that video, he did not dry run. He's got a certain amount of body bandwidth, okay? Which is knees, back, he's a guy that's been around. He's been through some injuries. And every single hit in that entire video, the first time he hit it was for the video, because he didn't want to do it 2 or 3 times. He just wanted to hit it once, because going big to flat, you don't want to do that a bunch. So just watching someone like pace it, not hit it, pace it, not hit it, and then be like, all right, we're good. All right, we're good. And then everyone's like, he's like, all right, make sure you guys are set up. He's like, I really just is kind of, I want this to be a oneer. You know, this is going to hurt a little bit. So, and I watched him the whole trip just know and be confident in himself as an athlete with the experience he had from previous, size up the task at hand, and then just hit it with style. And that was like where I realized I was like, oh, he's that good. You know what I mean? Like, he looks that good. But when you actually see someone just implement the skill, you're like, that's why he is who he is. He's that confidence, good. Confidence. He was just totally confident. It was so cool.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
We're getting there, Jimmy. What do you think?
I know. Oh, there was one other question that we had, sidebar. We asked somebody to come in, and it's where did this inspiration come from for the bike builds, like where did you get that? Did you have
Jim
it as
Wood, Jimmy's dad? Yeah, believe it or not, Jim Wood. So I always loved building my own motorcycles, and let's just put it this way, I've learned. My dad was high attention to detail, and he built good motorcycles, but the attention to detail is slightly different than taking apart every single bolt and polishing and CAD plating and Cerakoting and doing all that. And when I first moved to California, Jimmy Wood, Jim's son, had said, hey, my parents have an extra bedroom at their place, and it would be a perfect spot for you, because I basically needed a place to like get my feet landed. Like, I have a trailer, I have a van, I want to move to Southern California, I need to be here, but I don't really know where I'm going to go. So I went out there, and he had a motor building shop in his shop. And do you guys know Jim at all? Jim Senior?
No, not Jim Senior.
Okay, he is Brunt. Okay, he's nice. Brunt, and type of stuff. Like, first of all, he's soft and kind, and I love him. So like, there's that. But he would also be the guy who would be like, he built some hot shit motor for someone, and the someone would kind of be like, so I heard so-and-so's got whatever, you built him whatever, like, is this thing good? Like, yeah, good enough for who it's for. Like, he just, that in a nutshell is like the type that he is. So like, I would, he would get these 450 Hondas, 02 to 08 450 Hondas, all from the Inland Empire, and these things were the roachiest of roach. And he just had a formula. He'd take the bike in, he'd take it all apart, and this is where we differ. He was a service manager at Chaparral. He's built 1 million Honda 450 motors. One tote. He just take it apart and throw every part of the entire motorcycle in one box.
I couldn't do it.
Like, no separation, no, this is motor, this is chassis, just everything. And I remember almost getting anxiety the first time I saw him do it, because I was like, hey, like bolt lengths, like whatever. He's like, no, it's fine. He's like, things are designed to go together a certain way. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, there's only one way it's going to go together. And I was just like, okay, guy, whatever, like, good luck. Well, he was right, because he would Scotch-Brite the frames, and then he would get stuff from this radiator shop that you spray, and it kind of makes this bright silver aluminum, and then he would bead blast the cases, and then he would send out stuff for powder coating, and then he would turn down hardware on the lathe, and I was just like, okay, this is like exceptionally finite detail work. But if he needs to slap something together at the racetrack, you know what I mean, and just hammer the quick change and whatever, he's got no problem just grinding it out. But in the workshop, he was just very particular. Oh, we're going to WPC coat every single internal in the entire motor, and we're going to weld the crankshaft pin in this one, and just all this super finite work. And he would watch me and just poke at me for like being too OCD in some areas and not enough in others. Yeah. Or I'd like spend a whole bunch of time packing a bearing. He's like, waste the time. I'm like, okay, so some areas all the time, some areas not. And he kind of like, I went from like race bike building, you know, body work and parts, to like, oh, take it apart like for real. Like, let's take this thing all the way apart. And I have to like organize all my stuff. But the thing that it taught me is I know what he means now by like, it goes together. It just goes together a certain way, because actually, if you were an engineer, you know, an M5 that's this long with thread pitch X going into aluminum should only have a certain torque value, and you're not going to find that piece of hardware on the lower lug of a fork. So he's just meaning like the way that Honda engineers things, they put things in specific areas because they're engineered and designed to need that. Like, you're only going to find short well, you know, M6 nuts specifically in areas that is like not, you know, accessory style case cover sides. Like, you're not going to find anything with a short thread count on a center case, but you will on side cover. So instead of being like, well, I need to know the measurement of every bolt to know where it came from, he's like, no, you don't. You just need to look at the task at hand, see what parts you have, and you will eventually, you do it long enough, you'll understand how things go together. So that was a mindset change, because like, oh, okay, things should go together a certain way. Now, you can totally do it wrong. There's like, I've done plenty of it. I've done plenty of stuff wrong a bunch of times, but it mentality-wise changed. And then guys like Roland Sands and seeing that, you know, what they've come out of their side and the fabrication work of Aaron Boss and just, you know, these builders that I've seen who I didn't know the names of for a long time, and then move to California and know the names of and just see the level of proficiency that these guys have, was really like, wow, there's even more levels to this game. And then it just continued. And I like having nice stuff. You know, I really I like bringing something up that even if you have the same model as me, you're like,
damn,
wow.
Damn.
I like that. You know, there's something to be said. I love that.
Like I don't have the patience you have, though.
Yeah. No, dude, you I think everybody will respect it. You kill it. What is one, like, really, I know you said 35 days, but like your first one, like, did it, how?
YZ125, Verb Moto got hired through Red Bull to do it for Day in the Dirt. And we started the project in November, Day in the Dirt's and Thanksgiving. So we literally got greenlit. 28
days?
Yeah, and it was less. It was less by the time we got started. And this was the difference. Now, when I do a project in whatever, 30, 35 days, we kind of have it broken down to like, my videographer will be here for like 11 days. And then maybe a few pickups, or I get some pickups on my own. Dude, it was my buddy Wes and my buddy Crane just camped out with me. Like, imagine like they took turns, but imagine just like, I'm going to start, I'm going to take it apart, I'm going to Scotch-Brite, I'm going to order, you know, like, and there would be days where they'd come and go, but I didn't know how long it would take. I just assumed I could do it before Day in the Dirt. It happened to be about a month of time, and we ended up getting it done, and I pulled a couple all-nighters, and it was all crazy. And you also realize that if someone just said, go build your bike, turn the cameras off, whatever, you can do it way faster. You know, because not that the camera really slows you down, but the setup to make it aesthetically pleasing to do it. I'm going to be honest with you guys, like, you know, big, what do you call this? Like, what is it called when you expose something? Like, just a heads up to everyone out there. I don't lay out everything like that when I just am doing my own clutch quickly. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like if I'm just quickly doing. But it's going to be cleaner than 100% of anyone else who does it. So right? But it's still
so
like,
you Cerakote everything, or you send it out?
I Cerakote.
So you do
80%, 70% of what you see.
So when you do a bike build, do you have to send really anything away now, or are you kind of doing?
So I started sending more stuff away recently, just strictly due to my timeline. So like, for example, on the R1, I did most of the Cerakote, but for the video, let's cover the frame, the swing arm, 2 engine covers, and the wheels. Everything else I sent out to Cerakote directly. They don't offer this service, but we have a relationship to do for me. It's the first time I ever done that. And what that allows me to do is do 2 things at once. So I'm reassembling parts that have been done. I know that I have other parts that are being done for me. But, you know, there's certain projects where time permitting, I just got to rip it. Like, I think I did everything on the FS450. Yeah, I did all of it. I did everything except the clear powder on the frame. And some of the plastic bodywork pieces because of my unsureness about the cure temperatures on plastic and stuff like that. But, I do send out some of my sandblasting now because I have a little sandblast cabinet, and the cost to upgrade that setup to production level, I looked into it versus my hobbyist level. But that's all been learning curve because I pride myself on doing as much as I can, but I'm starting to have to lengthen the leash a little bit if I'm going to complete these things in a month. Yeah, for sure.
Sense. You ready, Jimmy?
Dude, this is it. Do you know what's coming?
I don't know. I don't think so.
What? You haven't listened to a pod
I listened to the JP one, but
all the way through?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Dude, everybody does this.
That's how we get them.
That's
how we get them. All right, so you got arrested. You're doing some wheelies in a parking lot at a strip club you shouldn't have been at.
Yeah.
And they threw you in jail and accuse you of doing some even worse stuff.
Yeah.
You're on death row.
Yeah.
What's your last meal? What are you gonna eat?
Death row meal.
The whole 9 yards.
Yeah,
death row
your
meal.
last meal.
We're gonna do porterhouse, big boy.
From where?
From what's the steakhouse in Austin, Texas? Oh my God! Actually, I think it's Harry and Izzy's, Indianapolis Porterhouse. Side of the mashed potatoes with the horseradish cocktail, jumbo shrimp, and a Manhattan. I'm not much of a drinker, but I would for that one. Yeah. That would do it. I do love nice cuts of steak, and Ruth Chris does a damn good job at delivering that. I'm sorry, not Ruth Chris, Harry and Izzy's. St. Elmo's, either or.
St.
Elmo's, Harry and Izzy's. Yeah,
I was waiting for
either or.
St. Elmo's cocktails.
Dude.
Because you know the deal with them, they share the same kitchen, but they're separate restaurant.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the same restaurant in Indy. So sometimes it's easier to get the reservation at Harry and Izzy's versus St. Elmo's. Same food, two spots.
Pro tip.
Yeah.
And no dessert?
Cheesecake. Because you know why? Cheesecake's got 6 to 9 grams protein.
That's what I like to hear.
Yep. Crucial. At least you got to justify it somehow.
Yeah. Factory mindset, dude.
Yeah, factory mindset.
AC, it's been unreal.
Dude, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting into your home.
First guest at the new shop,
sick.
The new house. I'm stoked to have you guys.
Stoked. Now we know what it looks like behind the scenes for the video. So.
We know.
Yeah.
We got the dirty secrets.
Yes, sir.
Hey, just so everybody knows, I'm starting a bike build.
Yeah.
Are you?
No.
It would be the exact polar opposite of what the kind of content you're doing. It'd be like, how can we throw shit everywhere and then put it back together?
Listen, I'm clean but messy.
Yeah.
There's a difference. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
dude.
you.
Appreciate it.
All good, buddy. Thank you.